dump god.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to our 20,000 subscriber special, where I will be ranking every single album released by the god Fahim. First off, thank you guys all so much. Anyone who's ever watched any one of my videos, every one of my subscribers, you mean the world to me. I'm so appreciative that anybody at all cares at what I have to say about this stuff. So the fact that I have 20,000 of you guys blows my mind. And I'm going to keep doing this for as long as I can. So thank you for staying on the journey with me. Now, this video is something I've been planning on doing for a while now. And even though I've known it was coming for a couple years, I completely underestimated how much of an undertaking this would be. I started physically writing this video about 7 months ago. And in that time, Fahim has released like 14 or 15 new projects. So I've just been on this seemingly never-ending quest to out-dump the dump god this whole time. And if you're watching this, that means I succeeded. Shout out to Fahim, who really is one of my favorite rappers and producers to ever live. It's one of the greatest discographies of all time, and I'm honored to be, I think, the first person to rank all of them at this point in his career. I'm sure after a week of me releasing this, he's going to release some more, and this will already be outdated, but for now, I did the best I could, so I hope you guys enjoy. There was one physical-only album called Starlight from 2021 that I couldn't quite track down, so I guess this isn't 100% complete, but I did the best I could. This video is a behemoth. I can't believe how long this thing ended up being, so treat it like a podcast, listen in spurts, however you want to tackle this thing. I made this for you guys, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, I'm just so thankful for each and every one of you guys. This video is long enough, so I'm not going to talk for any longer right now. Let me know down in the comments whose discography I should rank at 50,000 subscribers. And hopefully if we get there someday, I'll be able to do something just as crazy for you guys. And without further ado, let's get on with the ranking. In last place, we have Dump Legend from 2017. This is sort of a cheat because I've never actually heard this one, but really no one has. Supposedly it was a physical only release, and a bunch of people bought it, but it was never sent out. So it's sort of lost media at this point. I know it probably shouldn't even be on this ranking, but something had to be last, and that's what it gets for bamboozling fans. Next up, we have Dump Olympics, Gold Shot Put. This 3-track EP in collaboration with Sadhu Gold has never been a project that I could get into. I think Sadhu Gold is one of the most talented producers in the underground right now, but for some reason his style of beats never matches perfectly with Fahim for me. I feel like I usually like his style of beats best when he works with a rapper who's a little more low-key and abstract to really bring out the best in those beats. Of the 3 songs here, the one that hits me is actually the one that was produced by Fahim, and overall this little EP is just pretty skippable. Up next, Guru Saga. This 2-track EP is the shortest project on this list, and even though I like both these songs a lot, it just doesn't have enough meat on its bones to compare to anything else that's longer. The first track, Stone Cold, is actually really great. I think it's a prime example of what Fahim does when he's at his best. But like I said, in a catalog this deep, I never find myself going back to this one. The Supreme Hoarder of All Pristine Wealth. This is one of the few albums that I don't really have much to say about. You will rarely hear me use the term mid or middling, but that's kind of what I think about this one. I usually love Camouflage Monk's production, but for some reason these ones just sound unmemorable to me. And there's definitely a lot of good rhymes on here, but nothing that special when you have a sea of 140 albums coming at you. Next up, we have Snakes. This one was produced by Nico JP and is one of his most recent releases, coming out back in 2024. Overall, I think this is another forgettable one. The beats are fine, the lyrics are serviceable for the most part, but it's just so generic after over 140 albums of listening. The opening track starts off with some snake samples, which is very cool, but then they drop that theme very quickly, and it really makes me wish they were a little more ambitious in putting this one together. The track called The Game is easily my favorite on here, with a cool beat that sounds like Nico JP and Fahim are getting ready for battle in a war movie. And Fahim, who starts off his verse by saying, "I'm the physical manifestation of fuck around and find out," which is super hard. Next up, we have Chess Moves. This one is also produced by Nico JP, and I don't think that's a coincidence why they're so low. I don't dislike his beats, but they never seem to hit my ears in a memorable way. Even the songs on these tapes that I like are way down on the list of my favorite Fahim songs. I do think this is the superior of their two collaborations together, because I feel like this one is more consistent and has this ominous tone that I get a lot of enjoyment from. The opening track on here is very solid as well, but my favorite is The Fog, which has Fahim ripping it up over this great piano sample. Dump Pharma Volume 3. This 4-track EP is a part of a trilogy of physical-only releases. None of the 3 Dump Pharma records are available online, but I was lucky enough to find some fellow hip-hop heads who owned the record and were able to get me a few listens. All of the Dump Pharma records are very short, each coming in at around 7 or 8 minutes long. So it's really hard to put these against other full-length albums on the list, but with that being said, I do enjoy all 3 of them quite a bit. I think all 4 of the songs on this one are at the very least solid, with track 1 being truly great, and each one getting a little worse after that. The first track, Nightmares, has this grand desert feel to it like it's out of a scene from Lawrence of Arabia, and Fahim feels so under control on the track, letting each bar peel back patiently, unraveling a truly great opener. The second track, Old School, has this quirky, sort of circus-sounding beat, but doesn't really do too much for me. And then the third and fourth tracks are good, but nothing memorable. Dumpocalypse Now. This is a collaboration with Left Lane Didon, and it has him as the main MC and Fahim on production duties. This has some nice songs on it, but overall I just find it pretty skippable. Even the song with Makhami and the God Fahim rapping is one of their weaker joints together. Shalawam, Arcadia, and The Riddle are all songs that I like a lot, but when you name your album after a Tupac classic, you have a lot to live up to. Dump Truck 3. Our first entry of the Dump Truck series on this list, and it's an okay project. The songs themselves are pretty good, but at only 5 tracks long, it just does not give itself enough time to pick up any momentum. I think honestly it starts with the best song, and then just gets slightly worse each track. The last track, Space Age, even flips a sample that was later used better on Rock Marciano and the Alchemist's The Elephant Man's Bones. Like I said, there are some good songs on here. I think the first 2 joints specifically are very good, but overall, this is skippable. Breaking Through the Van Allen Belts. Contrary to the last 2 projects on this list, the production on here is very unique and memorable. From the organ and vocal hybrid in the background of Flame On, to the John Carpenter-esque synth runs on Ghost Guns. At its best, the beats on here feel like they come from an 80s genre film, but at its worst, it doesn't always feel like this is necessarily Fahim's bag. There's a lot of good rapping on here, but it never feels cohesive with the beats. And at only 5 songs long, the duo doesn't really give themselves the space that they need to build chemistry. Many Fahim songs have a similar sound to one another, so I do give this one a lot of credit for feeling different, but different isn't better in this case to me. Next up we have Dump God, Triz 9. This is the first Makhami appearance on this list, and it's an interesting EP, because it's one of the few on this list where Fahim isn't the main rapper, but the producer. There's only 3 tracks, and all of them are really great, but Fahim only has 1 verse, and the tape is so short, so I just can't put this one any farther up. More than anything, I think these tracks really show just how underrated Fahim is as a producer. And Mach sounds amazing over his production as well. If this were any longer, it would make some serious moves up the list, but for now, here's where it is. After that, we have Only God Can Judge Me. Fahim has worked a lot with Camouflage Monk over the years, and if this project was longer than just 3 tracks, it would be way higher on the list. Of all the albums we've talked about so far, this is by far the most locked in Fahim has been lyrically. On all 3 tracks, he dives in with the sharpness that he has when he's at his best, rapping about his own philosophy on life. All 3 beats have their own distinct sound to them, all being cohesive. The opener, Moon Talk, is my personal favorite with a hook that I especially love where he raps, "This is Moon Talk, catch me dancing in the rain, while chatting with the angels, my passion is insane." I always fuck with it when he gets on his ethereal, poetic bag. Next up we have Dark Shogun Assassin. Here is yet another very good EP from Fahim and Camouflage Monk that I wish was longer. Monk always has some incredible drums that set him apart from his drumless contemporaries, and Fahim's flow bounces off the production in a way that always hits my ears in the right way. Track 1 is a perfect example of this, with Fahim tearing up the beat for the first 2 minutes, and then Nack even shows up to devour this thing too. Next up we have Saturday Night Lights Volumes 1 and 2. This is the second collaboration with Makami that we have on here, and I always feel like this is a solid intro to show what this duo can do that makes their artistic partnership so special. These were originally released as 2 4-track EPs, and then together as one 7-track project on streaming and a vinyl that I own. And I think this is an accurate place for Saturday Night Lights, no matter if you cut them as separate or together. There's a couple tracks that I love on each EP, and each MC gets their time to shine. But when you put it all together, there's just nothing here that you can't get on a better collaboration between these two dump gods. Overall, I think Mach has more great moments than Fahim does on here, which is why it falls so far on this list specifically, but Fahim's verse on Breeze is one of my favorite of his career, just ripping it up with some clever rhymes and wordplay, attacking all the trash MCs out there. Black Fever Instrumentals. Our first instrumental project of the list is an interesting one, because Fahim and Thrasher Wolf shared the production duties. Each track alternates between 2 producers, and it makes for a group of beats that I like, but there doesn't seem to be too much cohesion between what each of them are doing. I think both of these producers are very skilled, but to me, instrumental projects are best when one producer is able to really take you on a journey, instead of just a collection of beats, which is what this feels like. Next up, Dump Life. This one is in collaboration with Jay Nice and Left Lane Didon. In the grand list of 140 something albums, I don't think this one has too much special to set it apart, but I still think it's very solid. All 3 MCs are very talented, and each have a different enough style to make it always fresh when they hop onto each song. It's cool to hear them rap about shouting dump life right before they do something, like it's their war cry, making it feel like these raps are for this album specifically, almost like it's a loose concept album about their team motto. The only reason this appears so low for me is just because he has to share the spotlight with 2 other MCs and some features. Next up we have Anarchy. Here's another one where Fahim is not the main MC. He produced this entire tape for the MC Anubis, who I wasn't actually familiar with before this. This project is super slept on in my opinion. Even though it's not high on the list, I think it's got some great stuff on here. Fahim never gets the respect he deserves as a producer, and this has some fire beats. I wasn't familiar with Anubis before this project, but I definitely like what I hear. He's got pretty nice flows and some clever wordplay, but my one complaint is the mixing just feels a little off. The vocals always feel under the beat, and it always just sounds a little unprofessional to me. Fahim does rap on 3 tracks here, and they're all pretty solid. Funny enough, Fahim's vocals don't have that same issue that Anubis did, so I'm not sure what was happening there. All in all, I should definitely check out more of Anubis' work because this was pretty fire. Soul Clap Tape. Fahim has always had great chemistry with the MC Kung Fu, so this is a nice project where they're each able to share the spotlight completely. Kung Fu has this very smooth style, and then Fahim's able to come through with this sharpness to cut right through that smoothness like butter. The sound of this tape is pretty chill in general, with some laid-back beats and each MC feeling relaxed and free when they're spitting. They both do a fine job, but there's not too many moments worth writing about. Dump God, Dragon Emperor Volume 2. This is a nice little project, with a lot that I like, but not a lot that keeps me coming back to it. It's only 18 minutes long, so there's not a ton to hold on to here, but with that being said, there's a couple tracks that I really like a lot. Fahim's flow on Black is vicious, and the sample of that, I guess Italian guy singing on Leaves Falling, give the track such a unique feeling. Material is almost a great track, starting off tackling the concept of modern materialism, but it loses focus of that theme pretty quickly. And Rocket Power is another one where I love the beat, and the lyrics are just fine, but don't have the same amount of quotables as I love in my Fahim songs. An album called Classic. Rush and Jay Nice are always dope, but their collaborations with Fahim usually leaving me wanting a bit more. This one's only 7 songs, 2 of which are an intro and an outro, And the three MCs all are sharing the spotlight, so none of them get their time to truly shine. Now the music that is here is very good. The whole tape has this chilled out, luxurious feeling to it, and all three MCs have such different voices that it becomes a great 1-2-3 punch. The 3-track run of Sydney and Shireen, Kalamata Olives, and Billboards is such a fantastic run of soulful rap, but for an album calling itself classic, it's a bit underwhelming. Dump Pharma Volume 1. The second entry of the Dump Pharma series. This one is a huge step up from the other one, because I feel like this one just has nothing but great songs. It's still a little short for my liking, but if you can get your hands on this one, I highly recommend it. Track 1, Work Effort, is one of my favorite songs that we've covered so far on the list. It has this unhinged, maybe clarinet sample that sounds like it's on the verge of insanity. And Fahim uses one of my favorite of his flows, talking about everything that he hates. It's just got a really awesome sound to it. It almost feels like a 1940s noir thriller. Track 2, Joint Time, has this really fun bounce, but tracks 3 and 4 are slightly less memorable, but still just as good. Both the producers, Archive Mind and Ekin Ramble, as well as Fahim, are all locked in on this, but I just wish it was longer. Dump Pharma Volume 2. Just like the other two Dump Pharma records, this one is super short, but still a great listen overall. I honestly think if the 3 Dump Pharma EPs were combined into one 12-song album, this could be like 80 or 90 spots up on the list. This is the best one to me because I think it maintains the high bar of quality throughout all 4 tracks consistently. Track 1, Shelves, is one of my favorite songs in the whole series. Fahim sounds so focused and ferocious on this thing. This was produced by Archive Mind and Ekin Ramble, just like the other two, and I'm not familiar with those guys, but they have a really cool sound here. On this EP specifically, the drums are knocking throughout this whole thing. Overall, I think Fahim sounds so motivated on this EP, maybe because he knew that only his true fans who were paying for it would be able to hear it. If you have access to any of the Dump Pharma EPs, then I highly recommend you giving them a spin. But like I've been saying, 7 minutes each is just not that much to sink your teeth into on a project. Supreme Dump Legend Volume 3. The Supreme Dump Legend series always makes me happy because it feels like at a time when he was really able to do some interesting stuff with a short project. 5 producers, 7 tracks, and just under 17 minutes. This tape packs a punch with a very short runtime. The opening track, Way It Go, was produced by Foisey and has this gnarly beat with these glitched out drums. And Fahim rides it perfectly, in a groove that I'm not sure many other MCs could have found on this beat. I think Esoteric is kind of a perfect song. Similar to the opener, the drums put this framework around him to flow his ass off. But after those first 2 joints, I do think this dips a bit in quality. Riordan is the only producer with multiple beats on here, and unfortunately, only one of his 3 beats works for me. Dump God, Rhyme Pays. This project was entirely produced by Mike Shab, and its placement on this list may not be entirely truthful. Most of these songs end up appearing on Dump Goat 2, which I'll talk about much later on in the list, and I just like what they bring to that longer compilation so much more. And it leaves me not having too much of a reason to come back to this one that much. Pays, For My People, and Mr. Truth are all songs that I fell in love with originally on that other project. The Dragon and the Treasure is probably my favorite track on here that's unique to this tape. Fahim has this swing to his flow that plays so well off the beat. The Remembrance is another great one. Overall, I think this is a great group of songs, but there's a lot more essential than this. Exiled from Earth. This might be the earliest album that we've covered on the list so far. 2017 is the year that really put Fahim on the map, but this tape from 2016 proves that he was ready for battle even before that. This tape is gritty, and Fahim sounds young and hungry to make a name for himself. His rapping on here is very impressive, with a sharpness to his mic presence that I don't think is always there for him. But while Fahim himself as a rapper reaches a very high bar, I don't think the project itself is as focused as I'd want it to be. With that being said, Warpath and Pyramid Temples start the project off with a 1-2 punch of Fahim and some freaking collaborators showing what they can do on the mic, but overall this is nothing too much more than a cool showing of the Dump God when he was a youngin'. Next up, Tales of the Banish. This one was produced by one of Fahim's best collaborators, Grimdoza. His production really suits Fahim well, in my opinion. It's extremely patient, just sitting back, letting the loops roll themselves over, giving Fahim an engaging but not overpowering backdrop. The whole thing has a bit of an ominous and spooky feeling to it, with this evil laugh acting as Grimdoza's producer tag. My favorite song on here is No Love, with maybe like a flute sample in the background, and Fahim even getting into some social commentary with his verse. Rings of Fire is another one of my favorites. He rips this cyclical flow and this very staccato hook that gives this song such an interesting feel to it. It's very infectious. Unfortunately, aside from the nice vibe and a couple of good songs, the rest of this project is sort of forgettable for me. Dump God, Dream Killer. This is a project that I always wish I liked a little more because I really love this cover art. And I think it's got such a cool vibe to it. And this is a good record, but it doesn't really have too many spots that stand out for me. I do like the production as a whole, and it has sort of this dreamy feeling to it, which each of the songs feeling almost like darkly angelic. What Is Life is probably my favorite song. It's almost like an anthem of positivity and living a good life, and I love that little Hi Baby sample that pops in the beat. Songs like Enforcer and Kumite are nice too, carrying on the theme of keeping your head up and grinding through life's struggles. That theme of positivity and perseverance run through this whole thing from track 1 until the end, which I do appreciate, so this one's solid. Iron Bull. This is an interesting project because of the 9 songs. I think 5 of them are pretty mediocre. When you listen to 140 albums of the same artist, there's a certain version of their sound that's good on its own, but it's sort of just a run-of-the-mill, basic level of what they can do. This tape has more than its fair share of those songs. The quality of this tape jumps up tremendously once Your Old Droog enters the picture. He has 3 guest verses on this tape, and not only his verses are great, but he inspires Fahim to level up his game too. Making Moves is another great song, where each MC gets introspective, rapping about their relationship with their family members and their tough upbringings. Let's Make a Deal features Droog and Makami, making this the first appearance of their trio group called New Religion. And whenever these 3 get together, it's so engaging, with each of their styles playing perfectly off of each other. And then Story Exit closes it off with the best Fahim solo joint in the project. Overall, this one is a mixed bag, but I think it has the highest highs that we've seen so far, so we're moving up this list pretty fast. Dump God, Kung Fu Edition. Another great collab tape with Kung Fu, this one with Fahim handling the production and Kung Fu on the mic. This one is a good amount better than the previous collab from these 2 that I talked about, because Fahim really puts his foot into these beats. Even the tracks that have a chill vibe have a distinct flavor to them. I like the track Vladimir, which feels like it could have been on the Soul Clap tape, except for these knocking drums that level it up. Destined has this grimy bass, contrasting the main melodic flute sample all over top of the sampled sounds of rain. Overall, this might have some of my favorite rapping from Kung Fu. He's really able to show his personality on this tape more than he can from some of his features. Fahim raps on a handful of tracks on here too, with my favorite being See It's Real. And honestly, this just feels like a regular old Fahim project, which, considering he doesn't rap all over the place on this thing, is definitely a compliment. Blood Spiller. Jay Nice and the God Fahim are true spitters, but I think the production on this tape lets them down a little bit. I love how unrelenting they both are on each and every song, just exhausting every rhyme that they have, but then passing the baton to each other to keep it going. But it takes until the 4th song, Heavy into Trunk, to get a beat that's worthy of these rappers' effort. As with a lot of the albums in this range of the ranking, it's only 20 minutes long, so there's no room for anything other than greatness, and it gets about halfway there. Once it does pick up, I think the second half of this record is a lot better. Nicholas Craven pops up with 2 beats on here, so that injects a bit of life into this project, but even with him, only one of the beats really hits me. Livestock is my favorite track on here, with both MCs hitting this crazy pocket over a flute sample that just stays dancing. If you're a true blue rap fan who loves down and dirty raps, then you'll definitely enjoy this one, but if you're looking to get into Fahim, I don't think this is the best example of what he does well. King Stogied, Dump God Edition. Fahim has produced a good amount of albums entirely for other MCs, And I think the MC who he works best with in this fashion is Heem Stogie. Heem is a clever writer, but it's the sharpness of his delivery that really makes him pop over these Fahim beats. He has this higher pitched voice that cuts right through the track, and he's able to put together some hooks on here too. Songs like Scottie Pippen and The Real The Fake really hook you in with the hook, and then keep it rolling with some super nice verses. If I remember correct, this is one of the rare entries on the list where Fahim has no verses at all, and Heem does such a good job that I don't even really miss him. Fahim provides some great beats on here that are distinct without ever overshadowing the vocals, which is all you can ask for. Chief Stogies. This is another one with Heem, and it's pretty similar in what it does well, hence why they're bunched together on here. This one does have 3 Fahim verses, which sort of separates it from the rest, and the opening track, The Crown, is a lethal opener, with Heem ripping off a crazy flow that sounds like a machine gun. Other than that, not too much here new to say, but still dope. Soul Searching. The best of this little Heem Stogie trilogy carries over what the other 2 records did well, but does everything just a little bit better. This is the longest one, and it has a bunch of songs that I really love. Both Heem's rapping and Fahim's production are both a level up to make some really fire hip hop. Heem has really become one of my favorite underrated MCs, and listening to his work with Fahim, he's able to really match the energy and creativity that I expect from the Dump Gods, and I think there's a natural chemistry between the 2 of them. But when it comes down to it, I'm making this list because I love the God Fahim as a rapper, and I just wish there was more TGF vocals on here. TDSS No Rappers Allowed Edition. It's hard to judge instrumental projects along with full albums with rapping, but I think this one holds its own as just a super dope listening experience. I can see why Fahim's style as a rapper may be divisive to some people, but I don't think there's any debate about how talented he is as a producer. This album can get play for me really anywhere. Each track feels distinct while also being such a nice cohesive ride from start to finish. It shows a lot of different aspects of his production too, with knocking drums and creative samples. Overall, this project is very slept on and great for anyone looking for some nice instrumental vibes. Dump Truck 5. This is a project that I really like, but it's just way too short. There's not one song on here that's over 3 minutes, so it never gets the time it needs to build its own identity within his catalog. With that being said, the short songs that are here do reach a pretty high bar. Raindrops is my favorite on the track list, with Fa ripping off a crazy rhyme scheme, rapping raindrops with a guy getting his brain popped, so they left him in the same spot, and so on. There's 5 producers across the 6 songs here, but it's unusually cohesive with all the beats having these ominous keys, and having it all feel like a paranoid old crime filler. Dart Lord Shogun is another track that has some fire bars from Fahim, but it stops after a minute and a half, so it just leaves me wanting more. And Smooth Playa ends it off with this fire beat from Guru Griff, feeling like it belongs in a 70s flick like Coffee or Foxy Brown. Luxury Art. I really love how every frequent collaborator of Fahim brings their own style to a project to show a different side to Fahim's sound. This one is with Rush, so you know it's going to be super smooth. This is one of the most chilled out projects on this whole list, so if you're looking for some nice mellow raps, then you'll definitely dig this. I think this tape starts off really strong with Bape Hoodie Sleeves 3, Red Ferrari, and Dior in the Night as probably the best 3 songs, besides the grandiose ringside seats that comes later on. I think overall I'm not the hugest fan of this type of vibe for Fahim. I think Rush is very talented, but it's just not my preferred style of rap. So with that being said, it's a very good album, but I just don't listen to it that much. Iron Monkey, Dump Olympics. Another very solid collaboration between Monk and Fahim. This one really starts it off with some of their best work. The opening track, Psychedelic, has Fahim and Smoke rocking over this amazing breakbeat. And then the next song, Gold Monkey, has Fa maintaining that energy over a much smoother beat that feels like it was made from ancient gold. And then Watch It Grow closes out the opening trilogy of tracks with a great song rapping about Fahim planning his knowledge and watching it grow into beautiful things. The rest of this tape falls a bit back into the comfort zone that this duo often falls in, but there is another highlight on the final track where Fahim breaks out his singing voice on the hook. The Myth Who Never Quit 3. Nicholas Craven is probably the best partnership that Fahim has with a producer. They have had so many amazing records together over the years, so the bar is pretty high for anything they do together. There's something about Craven's soulful production that works so perfectly with Fahim as a rapper. This is one of the more recent releases from the duo, releasing at the tail end of last year, and even though I do enjoy the songs on here, it does feel like they're a bit on autopilot. I believe this was the first record on this list that came out while I had already started writing this script, so it might have just gotten lost in the shuffle along with the other dozen or so albums that he released later on, and me just sort of trying to keep up with the whole dump release schedule that was happening in front of me. But this one never quite broke through the noise for me. With that being said, I do think Be Careful What You Wish For, Genki Dama, A Lot on My Mind, and It Ain't Free are all standout tracks here, and moments where both the beats and the bars reach a high level that we're used to with the duo. Next up, Dump God, Shot Clock King, Volume 2. Shot Clock King is the other series with Craven, and even though this is the worst of that series, it's still a nice EP filled with nothing but fun beats and rhymes. This tape is the most forgettable of the Shot Clock King series, with a few tracks on here that don't have much to hold on to, but the stuff that works is amazing. Shot Clock Legend started it out with the great sample that feels like it's from a 70s variety show. Fahim is always so comfortable on Craven's production. Even when it's not perfect, it still works so well. Negation is another dope song with a more villainous tone to it, with this vibrating organ and Fahim rapping about what makes him better than your favorite MC. Overall, this is a solid record, but this duo has a lot better in the chamber, and you're going to hear me talk about Craven a lot over the next couple hours. Supreme Dump Legend, The One Who Slayed the Moon. This one is interesting because overall I think this project is pretty mid, but it does have my number one favorite The God Fahim song ever. This tape lives in a very mellow and laid back register that I don't think Fahim sounds his best in. I always miss that fast flowing fanatical Fahim that we get on his harder tracks, especially when there's a whole tape outside of that sound completely. Songs like What's the Price and Winds of War are solid because they bring some energy and also feel like they have a strong purpose lyrically, but the real main event here is my favorite Fahim song, Shake It Up. This is essentially a poetic love song dedicated to a stripper over a Nicholas Craven beat that could only be played at a strip club straight out of heaven. This project in general might be a bit underwhelming, but it's worth a listen just for that track alone. Art Dealer, Volume 1. One of the best attributes of the God Fahim is his ear for beats. Over these 140-something records, he has a lot of great lyrics, but naturally not all of the bars are able to really hit me every time. But luckily, a lot of the time the production is able to really make a statement for him. Lyrically, I think this is a fine record, a couple of good moments, but nothing all that memorable. But the thing that really works with this project is the overall sense of smoothness that persists throughout the whole thing. It starts with the superb, almost sensual saxophone sample on the opening track, Different Strokes. The first two tracks are produced by Camouflaged Monk, and then the rest jumps around to some of the most consistent dump producers like JLVSN, Wearden, Craven, and Fahim himself. Flowers and Graveyards might be the highlight just because of how much peace that beat brings me, and Fahim rapping about waking up stress-free, even in the face of struggle, is a vibe that matches what I strive for in my everyday life. Strictly for my dumpers. Now this one is strictly for my dumpers, so if you're not a dumper, don't even think about listening to this one. But in all seriousness, this is an extremely solid record. Nice and Fahim are two MCs whose styles are defined by precision. So you'll get a ton of great lyrics on here. There's a few really dynamic posse cuts, which are always a spectacle when done right. I guess the only thing holding this one back for me is just that with a lot of these lower ranked collaborative albums, even though there's nothing I dislike about this project, I'd just much prefer an album that has much more Fahim on it. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap. This is the first of the newest series from the God Fahim and Nicholas Craven. It's ironic that this was named after the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z, because that's when you're supposed to be training and pushing yourself harder than you could imagine. But this tape feels more like it's them two taking it easy and making some good but safe hip-hop, staying in their comfort zone as a partnership. Dump Dynasty is a standout for me with this cool guitar sample and beat switch, and Fahim sprinkling in some Dragon Ball Z references of the Cell Saga. 10 Times Gravity is another dope song that almost acts as the thesis for this project, with Fahim rapping about how he works harder than anyone, which allows him to be the 100 tape legend that we know today. My actual favorite thing about this album is that there's a song called The Supreme Kai of Bean Pies, which is just so funny for me for no reason. This duo has so many amazing collaborations that this one is probably skippable, but if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z and want to see some references, then you can do a lot worse than this project. Another entry to that same series. Honestly, they've released so many editions of this series over the past few months that I'm a little lost in the sauce of how to rank these, because they're all very solid. The overall tone of this one is very somber and introspective, with a lot of the lyrics focusing on Fahim digging into why he does what he does. Songs like The Intent of Vengeance and Not For Sale are super nice, and fill this one out with some classic Craven soul samples. I think this album has a pretty even mix of songs that I think are very good and on par for what this duo does at their best, and a lot of stuff that I think is just kind of forgettable. Lethal Weapon. For just a peek behind the scenes of making this video, at the time of writing this specific review, I have already recorded a majority of this video. It took me 4.5 hours to read over 20,000 words that I wrote for the video, and just when I thought it was done, the god Fahim decided to release 5 albums in 9 days, and a look into the future again, he released some more since then, so I'm back to work. This is only one of 2 of those recent releases that was not produced by Nicholas Craven. On this one, he teams up with Drega33, who, while I'm not familiar with him, he does a great job with these beats on here. He carries on that soulful tradition that Fahim works so well on top of, and Fahim is in such a great place lyrically right now, which I'll talk more about on the other albums that he dropped. Leave Nothing Left started off with this incredible vocal sample that gets me so hyped every time I hear it, but there is something with the production here that doesn't quite all come together for me. While I love the main sample on each song, and Fahim kills it, his vocals never quite sound perfect over these beats. I'm not sure if it's the mixing or the drums, but they don't hit as hard as they should. The Speed Force is my favorite song here, maybe because the drums are so buried in the mix that it doesn't really affect things. But the lyrics and main vocal sample are just immaculate on this song. Overall, this is fun, but Fahim and Craven do something similar at multiple times on this list a lot better. Lethal Weapon 2. Another one from Drega33, and as the only non-Craven producer who's been involved with this latest onslaught of dumps, I do really like what he brings to the table. This one feels like it corrects a little bit of the lack of cohesion that was on the first record, and it's overall just some nice music. My favorite moment on here is actually on track 2, where Jay Nice hops in for possibly my favorite verse of the year. He annihilates this track. I'd love to see Fahim and Drega33 work together more often, because they have something really good that's building here, even if neither of these 2 records reach the high highs that Fahim gets with some other producers. Dump God, Rap Lord. This project is short and sweet, coming in at only around 15 minutes, and Fahim sounds very focused and hungry as a lyricist on this one. I do think that for a short project, there are 2 songs that are pretty clearly skippable for me, Red Dead Redemption and #47, so that's disappointing in a project with a runtime this short, but the other 5 tracks are really great. I think Fahim is so talented at writing and delivering hooks because he's able to almost rap his delivery of them and have them go right into his verses to make them more memorable and quotable. The opening track, Moonhorn, started out expertly with the iconic Dump God Rap Lord Spend 1 Stack 4 hook that gets me so hyped every time I hear it. Then on Dollar Bill, he croons, "Life is a never-ending battle uphill, live by the gun, die by the dollar bill." With such a short runtime, this project does have a lot of moments that I come back to over and over. Piano Noise and Nebulous Demons ended off with a great 1-2 punch. I just wish that this tape ended with a Fahim verse, and not one that I don't really love by Smoke. Iron Monkey. I know it seems like I'm down on some of these projects with Camouflage Monk, and maybe in this most recent run of listening to everything all at once, His beats just aren't hitting my ears in the most memorable way every time, but you have to realize that even these records that I have in the 90s and 100s, I still like quite a bit. This one has a very cool martial arts theme throughout that gives Fahim a strong purpose and helps him feel comfortable and hungry. Those That Slay Dragons is the first real song on here after the intro, and it's a perfect example of what Fahim and Monk can do together at their best. It tells a riveting story about a job gone wrong when making deals with the devil. The song starts off with this great but simple beat and evolves into these angels' voices dancing with sirens, matching the arc of the story that Fahim is spitting. And even though the project never reaches those heights again, there's still a few very solid moments, most notably Noqh and Fahim joining together again for Saga City. Bright Side of the Moon flips the same sample as the Underachievers' classic Gold Soul Theory, and Fresh Air closes it out with one of my favorite joints to play once autumn rolls around. Dump Truck Volume 6. This is a very aggressive tape, with each of these beats knocking through the speakers, and Fahim never letting up on the attitude with his delivery. Even a smoother track like Shadows of Death keep the foot on your neck with a sense of purpose. Kung Fu and Heem Stogid each have nice verses on here, keeping up with Fahim's energy and passion. There's only 6 songs on here, and none of them are over 2.5 minutes, so this may not fill you up as much as a full-length entree, but it's a great bite-sized snack that will hold you over between dump sessions. Dump Truck. The first entry to the Dump Truck series is another short but sweet gem. Just like the last one I talked about, this one maintains a certain level of tenacity, and while the drums still knock, these beats overall provide a little more variety and match my personal taste a bit more. Nicholas Craven produced 60% of this, so it's definitely got a more soulful sound to it. It's All Good is not just good, but a great song that highlights Fahim's positive disposition and makes his music such a great soundtrack to listen to when you need to pick me up. There's no bad songs on here, and it ends with a funny monologue by Fahim as Brederick Douglass telling us his rules, rounding out this tape with a feeling of finality that it needed. Machine Gun Vocabulary. This Cartoon Beats produced record was released last year, and it's hard as hell, super underrated. Fahim was so locked in lyrically on this project. The album cover is a perfect representation of what this tape sounds like, with all of his words flaming out of this machine gun, and this is just non-stop bars. The production isn't the most unique, sort of sounding like something that could be found on any Conway the Machine record, but it does have this edge to it that's perfect for Fahim to dump over. And Fahim isn't the only one who's dumping with lyrical precision. He assembled a stacked feature list, filled with artists who I've never really seen him work with before. It makes this a really fun and unique listen. It features Cormega, Lord Sko, Skyzoo, and RJ Payne. This is an album for the technique technicians who listen to rap for the lyrics and the lyrics alone. I'd say if you were in the business for some Griselda type music, give this one a shot, but personally I do think that Fahim has a lot of projects with a more full sound than this. Trunk Olympics, Think Again. This takes the good songs from the last Dump Truck record I talked about and puts some more meat around it to make a more full, complete project of it. The production on this one is really what steals the show for me, with a murderer's row of classic Fahim collaborators including Camouflage Monk, Danny, Irie, Guru Griff, and JLVSN. And while it might not be as tight and perfect as the original Dump Truck, the variety and scope that all these producers bring is a very nice touch. This is sort of similar to The One Who Slayed the Moon for me, as the album itself is solid, but it has one of my all-time favorite joints on here, called What About. On this song, Fahim channels his almost inner George Bailey, rapping about contemplating what the world would be like if he were to die. But really, it's kind of the Craven beat that makes this song one of my favorites. As I'm recording this, I do think maybe this is a little low, so take this placement with a grain of salt. This one is very solid. Fahim Sonic Library Volumes 2 and 1. I'm doing a little 2-for-1 special on here to talk about these both at once. The God Fahim is so slept on as a producer, and this is a collection of beats made by an expert. Both of these tapes are a great example of the full gambit of what he brings on the boards, from the samples to the drums to the sequencing. It's all top tier. I guess I'd say the only thing that holds this back is that most of these beats are pretty simple loops without much change within each beat. So this feels less like a living, breathing instrumental album and more just like a collection of amazing beats for someone to rap over. You'll recognize a few of these beats as stuff that he would go on to rap over in later years, so it's cool hearing them in this different context with some new sounds surrounding it. I think I slightly prefer Volume 1 because the opening and closing tracks are such clear standouts, but overall both these are dope. Supreme Dump Legend, I Give You Art. This compilation tape does an amazing job at assembling some of the best songs that Fahim has made. I'm pretty sure that every song on this was produced by Fahim himself, with the exception of the phenomenal bonus track produced by Evidence. So this is a great showcase of everything that Fahim offers as an artist. It literally feels like him telling his fans, look at all this amazing art that I've given you. So if you're a new Fahim fan and want an appetizer of what he's all about, this could be a great place for you to start. I personally can't put this one any higher because I originally discovered and fell in love with all these songs on other projects, so I never have much of a reason to go back to it. Dump Towers Volume 1, a playlist by Juju Gotti. Here is another dope compilation tape, this one I guess compiled by Juju Gotti, who's a frequent collaborator of Noqh and Fahim. Noqh does appear on most of these tracks, which is awesome. Them as a duo are always fire, so it's cool to see what Juju deems worthy of being on this playlist. Similar to the last one, this is fire and good for anyone who's trying to get a taste for what Noqh and Fahim are all about, but all these songs can be found elsewhere, so there's no reason for me to listen to it. Supreme Dump Legend, Starlight, Instrumentals. This is the last in a small run of albums on this list that I didn't really know what to do with as far as their ranking. This one specifically is another instrumental project, and I really fuck with it. For one reason or another, the beats just hit me in the right way. The drums and instrumentation combine in a way that's almost hypnotizing to me. The first two tracks hit me exactly where I want instrumentals from the Dump God to hit, and after that it does get a little more mellow and low-key, so it loses a bit of its momentum, but still a super solid beat tape. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 4. This one lives in a sweet spot of being really great consistently throughout, but not having that many memorable moments. Craven does a great job of providing a nice amount of variety with his beats, while still having them feel very much within his wheelhouse. And Fahim punchlines his way through this thing like he's sparring in a boxing ring. There's too many great but similar records in this series for me to have any more words about this one for now, but super solid. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 6. This is another one of the late entries to the list, and the first of the Craven albums that were released after I already recorded a majority of this video. At this point I feel like I've talked about Nicholas Craven and the God Fahim's partnership for what feels like a week straight, and they're my favorite hip hop duo right now. This project is just another in a long list of great additions to their canon that they've been dropping recently. The opening track, Symptoms, is incredible. It's got such a swing to it, and works so well to set the tone for the next 16 minutes. Corin is another clear standout here, with just horns and drum fills looping over and over and over on the beat. At this point, Fahim has probably rapped over 10,000 hours just over Nicholas Craven beats alone, so this stuff is all masterful. Over 9,000 is one of the few moments where Fahim sticks to his DBZ themes, and he really shows why his power level is off the charts on this track. Craven laces up this beautiful, calm, and laid-back beat, and Fahim gets as poetic as ever on here. Crusher is probably my least favorite song on here. Besides that, this whole thing has a great, incredibly soulful sound. And honestly, all the Hyperbolic Time Chamber rap records could probably be switched with one another, but this is what I got. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 7. Going back to back with these late additions, is there a huge difference in quality between these? No, but I think they're both pretty great. If I had to differentiate the two, I think that this one has a little bit more of a wider feel to it. That last one was a little bit more of a blues, soul focused on the production, which I loved. But this one scratches a few more itches that the partnership can provide. Unlike the last one, which started off really strong, and then had a few great tracks sprinkled throughout, this one starts off good, but ends with 3 perfect jams in a row. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 11. This one is really great and probably deserves to be around the 60s or higher, but I'm punishing it because Fahim just keeps releasing albums, and at this rate I can't keep up with it. I'm so close yet so far from finishing. Black Pearl. This is one of the earliest albums on the list, released back in 2015, and I think this is the project where he really started to discover who he is as an artist. You can hear the youth in his sound at times, but I don't think there's much novelty in his rawness here, as he's pretty close to fully formed. It helps having a no-nonsense producer like Camouflage Monk, because none of these beats are too showy, but they're all simple and clean enough to have Fahim always find the pocket. Most of this album has a laid-back vibe to it, but the moments where Fa lets his aggressive nature show through is where this really shines. Twin Towers is my favorite joint on here for that very reason. He sounds so full of life and attitude. There's a lot of fun bars on here, like telling suckers that he'll heat them up like leftovers. Black Pearl and Worst Enemy are some super dope tracks, where Monk's mellow beat doesn't stop Fahim from really going in hard with his verses. Divine Mind has this great hook that feels like a throwback to maybe an old Method Man joint or something. Fahim's youth does show at times, like on the last track here where he gets bit by the lyrical miracle diabolical molecule bug for a bit. And there's also these 10-second skits that don't really add anything to the project, but overall, the music is very good and a great showcase for what Fahim and Monk are able to do as a duo. Clap God. This is a project that feels really close to being great. I love how it mixes some chiller beats with a real tenacity from Fahim as the main MC, and I also love how he lets this project breathe. 37 minutes might not seem that long, but compared to a lot of these 5 or 6 song EPs that are on this list, this one's a breath of fresh air. I don't think all 13 tracks hit consistently, but the ones that do are super nice. The song Can't Let Down is a great example of what I appreciate from this tape. On many of these other projects, he would have just been in and out in 2 verses in 2 minutes, but with this track he's so patient, letting each verse and hook from Fahim take its time to make an impression. And after 4 minutes it feels earned when I go right back to run this track back again from the start. And most of these songs make the most out of their runtime, being very patient, especially for someone who releases albums almost every week. That patience is appreciated. I think the middle dips in quality just a bit, but once it hits Poetry is Power, it closes out on a real strong note until the end. What's Going On has Fahim finding this great bounce over a beat that he produced himself. Yorimoto has him in his element, flowing over this angelic vocal sample. Gunpowder has him in his villain bag on top of this unrelenting piano loop. And Pick and Choose closes it out with Fahim doing what he does best, with a classic positive jam on Taking Control of Your Life over this beautiful soul sample. The more I listen to this one, the more I enjoy it. Dump Truck 4. It's been a while since we've had one of these 5-track EPs on here, but I think this is one of the finest examples of when he does that at its best. This features 5 tracks, all by 5 different producers, who each works with Fahim very well. Obliv, ID, Wearden, Camouflage Monk, and Nicholas Craven. Each of these tracks brings out a little something different for him to dump over. Fahim really kills this entire project with a tenacity in his delivery that makes this hit hard and feel like we're getting the full range of what he can do in just 11 minutes. You can hear most of these songs used differently on other full-length projects, but for what this is, I think it's a perfect showcase of what the god Fahim can do in just 5 short songs. Dump Assassins. DJ Muggs is a legend, so it's awesome hearing Fahim rap with a producer whose sound is so powerful and refined. The production on this tape has almost this Arabian Nights sort of feel to it, which gives it this dusty, antique feeling, while still being big and bombastic at times. Fahim takes full advantage of the icon on production, lacing together some seriously sinister verses. The Dealer is a cool song where they pitch Fahim's voice down with each verse until it devolves into this devilish distortion. The end phase is probably the best track here, and really acts as almost the climax to the album, with Fahim firing on all cylinders. This album has some top tier stuff on it when it's at its best, but I do think the production does misstep a couple of times on the softer tracks. There's a few songs on here where there's no drums in sight, and although that sound can work with many MCs, I just don't think Fahim sounds the best without any drums to bounce off of. Take Scott Pippen for example. This beat is almost exclusively percussion, with Muggs assembling a collage of noises for Fa to dump over, and it sounds so much more dynamic than the much prettier but drumless, con recommendo. This album has one of the more unique sounds within his catalog, which I really appreciate, and even though not every song works for my ear personally, I do think this is one of his most important albums. Dreams of Medina. This is an album that I always slept on, but the more I listen to the lyrics, I love this record more and more. This is a serious and somber project, with both the beats and the bars playing into the gravity of each song. The opening track is amazing. He raps over a rare August Fanon beat, and his verses are so sharp, running the gambit of all the lyrical topics that he covers most. Uplifting motivational bars, braggadocious wordplay, battle-worthy bars putting other MCs down, and also very personal lyrics about dealing with depression and the loss of life. Devil's Messenger is just a little 40-second interlude, but it paints the mood so perfectly for the rest of the album. This whole thing has an emotional, historic feel to it. Firelord Ozai continues his fire with him comparing his flow to the Epic of Gilgamesh. I feel like Fahim gets lumped in with the overall drumless underground sound, but his drums are honestly some of my favorite parts of his production. Like Samurais of Homicide are built from the snares out, leaving everything else, including his voice, to be an accessory to the knocking drums that just keep chugging along. Rainy Days is another standout here, with Fahim trying to write his way through the rainy days of struggle. I do think it ends on a bit of a weaker note, with the last 3 tracks slightly tailing off in quality each one, and at 8, really only 7 actual songs, that slight slip up is enough to have this one so low. Dump God, The Divine Brotherhood. This is a very cool album with a jazzier feel to it than most. Both MCs are so under control on this one, and while I do think the beats are a little mixed in quality, the ones that work are some of my all-time favorites. The production is split between Fahim and a guy named Benji Socrates, who I wasn't too familiar with, but he does a great job on this tape, providing the duo with some very smooth and classy feeling beats. The first half of the record is pretty damn perfect. Holographic Universe is one of my favorite Fahim songs ever, with remarkable verses from each MC and a great hook from Fahim, all over one of the smoothest beats of his career. Overall, the tape does such a great job at being mellow in tone, but not feeling lazy or low effort. It balances right on the line of coolness without being apathetic. Black Pearl 2. The sequel to the album I just covered a minute ago, this duo is a lot more comfortable in their sound here. They're straight up just in their bag on this whole thing. It sounded like Camouflage Monk sampled from a wider variety of instruments and tones, so the production really does shine for most of this. Righteousness Rises is an extremely rare case where I don't like Fahim's rapping actually. It just feels like he can't really find the pocket with his flow on it, but even with that, the beat is still interesting enough to keep me engaged. For most of this album, I'd say Fa and the beats are really at their best. The song Booked Up has Fa straight flowing over this beautiful beat that combines both great piano and soul samples. The lyrics to this song aren't available online, so I'm not sure if I'm hearing this right, but I swear to Dump God, the first line of the song is "smelly poop bags and luxurious jags," and it cracks me up every time. Let me know down in the comments, am I hearing that right or am I just crazy? Gravy Over Biscuits is another one of my favorites on here. Fahim slows down and speeds up his flow while telling us that everything is good and all gravy. This one's got such a unique song structure that never fails to put me in a calming mood. Fahim feels so comfortable on this project. There's a world where this could end up a lot higher on this list, but the lyrics themselves aren't among his best, so I think this is where it has to fall for me. Shot Clock King Volume 4. By the 4th entry of this series, it's pretty apparent that the Shot Clock King series is low stakes. Nicholas Craven and the God Fahim combine to drop yet another short but amazing set of tracks that blend positive rap boasts with polished vocal soul loops. There's nothing groundbreaking about this project, but it doesn't really matter. All 6 songs work perfectly. It starts off on a bit of a harder note with Area of Effect. Fahim opens it up with Heat, and then Jay Nice follows him up with possibly my favorite verse of the tape. Nice to Know smooths it out with a more soulful sample, and Fahim digging into his bag of tricks for more quotables that are all strung together with a flow so nice that it would have the potential to outshine the rest of the tape if it all wasn't of such high quality. His flow across this whole project is remarkable. It's unrelenting, with such a clarity of rhythm that carries through it. The subject matter rarely gets past skin deep, until the final track, Work Hard, Play Hard, which has Fahim rapping about his legacy and how hard he's worked to get where he is now. A fitting end to the Shot Clock King series, for now. Gun Karate. Unlike his other collaborations with Heem Stogid, Fahim only produces one song on here, and both MCs rock the mic. When these two dudes rap together, the sharpness of their voices and flows gives me so much energy when I listen. K-Slugga, Flip, and ID split the production, giving this tape a pretty solid mix of vibes. The Flip produced Devoted has this electric bounce to it that separates itself from the rest of the tape. The track No Replacements is an all-timer dump god anthem, with Heem on the hook begging please please I got to dump this shit with ease, and both MCs annihilating their verses. Overall, I do view this slightly more as a Heem Stogid project than a The God Fahim one, so even though I would highly recommend this project, go into it with that in mind. Supreme Dump Legend Volume 1. My least favorite thing about the Supreme Dump Legend series is that all of the albums have the same cover, which makes it very hard to differentiate between them, especially when I'm listening to all these albums back to back to back, so that's pretty much my one major qualm with this one. Just like all his solo dump records, the lyricism and production meet to reach such a high bar of hip-hop here. This tape is almost like a tale of two albums. The first 3 songs are produced by Craven, and the next 4 mix it up with 4 different producers who each bring some variety to the dumping grounds. April Breeze starts it off wonderfully, with Fahim rapping about the bad times that have blown in, along with the April Breeze. Corner Store follows that up with a beautiful song that feels steeped with nostalgia, even when it's looking forward to better days. The beats all keep Fahim in a cool and collected zone where he's able to really get nice with his lyrics. This tape is the definition of high quality, even though it doesn't do all that much to wow me around 50 projects in. The Wolf of Wall Street 2, The American Dream. There was a year span where The God Fahim and Your Old Droog became an official duo and made some of the best work of their careers. With this being the third and final of their albums together, it sort of acts as a victory lap for the duo. The sound is soulful and celebratory, and the lyrics are all about everything they've been blessed with in life on this winning streak they're on. This is the least ambitious of their 3 records together, but it still is such a nice listen. Both these MCs have such amazing presence, and their styles are so different, while bringing the same amount of creativity. When Droog and Fahim link up, it's always filled with punchlines and quotables, and this is no exception. Even though they both have achieved higher heights on their respective solo records, I still hope we get a Wolf of Wall Street 3 someday. 1001 Nights. Here's another 5-track EP, but what separates this one from the rest is the incredible production by DUS. There's this beautiful power to all of these beats that I just love so much, and Fahim does them justice, waxing poetic about how hard he's worked on his 1001 step journey to get where he is today. I do wish this one was a bit longer, but as opposed to many of his short EPs, this one has a sound that you can't really get anywhere else in his discography. With thousands of songs that I've listened to these past few months, I think this is the only music that he's released with DUS, and I really like their sound together, so I hope they work together more in the future. The Conflict of Roosevelt Creek Instrumentals. Of the few instrumental projects that I've covered on here, this is by far the most focused. This feels like there's no need for rapping on it. The beats tell their own story of a stoic samurai in feudal Japan. Now that may just be what my imagination brings me when I look at the cover and listen to the beats, but the music brings me there. I've said it a few times during this video, but I really do think that the drums he uses are extremely underrated. This whole tape knocks. And this isn't just all generic loops and samples. Once you get around track 5 and 6, he messes with some really unorthodox instrumentation that I think works very well and adds some funkiness to it. Really, from start to finish, I have no qualms with this one. Highly recommend. Supreme Dump Legend, Soul Cook Saga. Cook and Soul has such a distinctive production style, with that sort of neo boom bap processed soul sound to it. So I think your enjoyment of this project really relies on what you think of that style. In a vacuum, I don't think this type of beats fits the god Fahim's sound the best. This tape almost feels like a glorified remix project in a lot of ways. But with that being said, comparing this to the other 140 something albums, it does have such a unique feel to it that separates it from the pack. There's an incredible run of consistency that this duo is able to find together that almost equates to like easy listening rap or something like that. You can toss this album on anywhere, anytime, and it'll just blend into the background in the best way possible. Guillotine is my favorite song here. I just love the flow and rhyme scheme that Fahim is able to fall into, and then Shark Biting Vampires finds a bit of that venom that this project needed and pulls it all together. Kukansol and Fahim make this sound so effortless, and overall it's a very solid project. Shogun's Odyssey Preamble. Fahim has many underappreciated albums, but this one I think might be his most undiscovered gem. Thrasher Wolf kills the production, with the beats on here sounding like a movie score that takes you on a journey from start to finish. The god Fahim and Smoke take these beats and do them justice every time. They both sound so focused and in lockstep on this record. I've enjoyed Smoke's collaborations throughout this list, but this one really sets itself apart for me as his best work that I've heard. I've listened to so many raps from the god Fahim over these past few months, and with that it's easy to hear when he's locked in and really taking his MC duties seriously, and this is one of those moments. He sounds so confident and with purpose on every track. The flows and subject matter are nothing out of the ordinary that would wow you, but it's just an MC taking care of business and locking in when he needs to. It is only 14 minutes, so I do think this project leaves a little to be desired, but there is a lot of greatness in here. Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 5. Staying with the Hyperbolic Time Chamber series, but jumping to the future, with another one of the recent batch of albums that they've been releasing lately. At the time of writing this, they've released 5 albums within a week, and it has been a crazy dump season to say the least. This is the longest of that recent batch of albums, and really gives us the most subject matter to dive into. There's a lot of great stuff on here. I think Fahim is exceptionally punchy on this one. There's so many clever lines, and a confidence and clarity to his performance that can only be there after making around 140 albums, and probably 40 alone with the guy he's working with on this. This album toes the line between the utmost soul and the weird and cool quirks that this duo brings together. If I got to listen to this one more, then it probably would be higher, but I got a video to drop, so here it goes. Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 8. This is the shortest entry to the Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap series, at least at the time that I'm writing this. I know they've released a few more now that I'm recording it, but that runtime does not hold this one back. This one is so dynamic and rewarding. Listening to all these in a row, you can really feel that they were spending all this time in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, and records like this are their final Super Saiyan result. I would get into more detail on this one, but literally as I'm writing these words, they just announced that they're dropping another one, so gotta keep it moving. Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 9. I'm afraid to call this the latest in the Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap series because every time I say that, he drops a few more projects on my head. But for whatever it's worth, this album is still money. This has some of the most varied production from Craven that I've heard recently. The first track, Effin' Mike's Up, has this crazy drum loop going with this organ sprinkled in. Sounds nothing like the usual soulful affair from him, but Fahim absolutely murks it. Unlimited Dump is a beautiful track. I really like every track on here, honestly, because there is a lot of variety within the range of what these two are able to do together, so it's awesome to hear that on display. Fahim is on the money with his lyrics here too. Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 10. Is this a cop-out putting a bunch of these that have dropped recently in a row like this? Maybe, but you know what? They just keep getting better. I was gonna throw this one at the bottom of the list as a punishment for having me go back to write and record this video so much, but I just couldn't do that when this thing is so great. Craven has a few all-time beautiful beats on here, and Fahim has some of my favorite quotables of this whole series, like how his pockets are hulky, like Lou Ferrigno, and how he passes the time by giving out ass whoopings. I've had no time to live this one, but great project. Dollar Menu 4. The most recent release in the Dollar Menu series is so good, man. This project is so cohesive, By this point, Noqh and Fahim have made so much music together that this feels effortless for them. I think this project is incredibly consistent. There's no weak tracks here. I have all 9 of them saved to my main playlist that I listen to all the time. But even though I think Fahim has no bad verses on here, I do think it's usually Noqh who walks away from each of these tracks with the most memorable presence. It's hard to even call out any song specifically on this record because I think they're all really good. They did an excellent job of picking production that felt cohesive while still having each beat feel distinct from one another. Even though I do think this record is truly great, I don't think that any of these songs would make it into the Hall of Fame for either of these two artists. This is one of my most listened to albums from these artists, so maybe I'm just used to its greatness at this point, but there's not as many moments on here that wow me as I would like. Still a high recommend, but I'm talking about one of the greatest discographies of all time here. The Myth Who Never Quit 2. Nicholas Craven and the God Fahim return for yet another great collaboration. This one will not break the bank with any new concepts for the duo, but it doesn't really matter. They're just so consistent and always combining their styles to make the nicest sound around. Fahim has some really great quotables on this one, saying on one track that he'll slap you with the last 400 years of history, which is a bar if I've ever heard one. Make Way is a really cool song, because the vocal sample doesn't feel like a 70s old throwback. It sounds more like a chop of a more modern soul song, which makes it immediately stand out. A lot of these sample choices are actually very inspired. The track Out of Options has Craven flip this probably 80s pop hook for a track that sounds much more commercial than it does when these two usually link up. Of the 11 tracks here, there's legitimately 0 skips. Every one of these songs is super nice and easy to listen to, but I do think they have more projects with some higher highs from a lyrical and production perspective. Duck Season, Chinese Algebra. Fahim's full-length collaborations with Noqh always reach the highest bar of quality. This one is 24 minutes of beautiful music. As a rapping duo, I don't think this is the best showcase of this pairing, as even though Fahim raps on 6 of the 8 songs, I don't feel like he ever quite matches the mic presence that Noqh brings here. But Fahim does produce every track with a timeless precision that brings out the best in what Noqh does as an MC. Hut 1 has one of my favorite beats that he's ever made, with that No Man Is Safe sample echoing in the back. This song comes 5 tracks in and is the first moment where he really comes out rapping as hard as his beats are, and he rips this thing. There's something that just works when Noqh raps over the God Fahim's production. Their chemistry is unmatched, and there's nothing quite like it. And even though I do wish Fah had a couple more moments to shine as a rapper, this album is pretty great, and I really love it. Dump God, Dragon Emperor. I like to think of this project as a perfect little Dump God sampler. In just 17 minutes, the God Fahim takes you through the whole menu of what he brings. Transitions, channels the hopeful, heavenly energy that he brings to his more peaceful tracks. Game brings his attitude over some classic boom bap production. One and Only gets grimy, with Fahim rapping like he found the beat in the slums of Shaolin. Why You Rappin' Like That has him mastering his more chilled out flow over the same beat that Westside Gunn would use for 327 2 whole years later. And Mary Jane closes it out with a conceptual track, with Fahim crooning and penning an ode to weed. Those That Slay Dragons. On this album, the God Fahim channels his inner coach from Survivor, becoming a true dragon slayer. He fully produced this entire thing, and it's just got that classic Dump God feel to it. Noqh opens it up with a rip-roaring verse on Canned Soda. Fahim reaches the top tier of his talents with both the beats and the bars. There's some all-time quotables on here. On the song Crack Haiku, he says, "I barbecue your flesh when I put the heat to your ribs." That shit is fire. Then later in the same verse he says he'll put 3 holes in your head then go bowling. I always love the creativity of his punchlines. Butterfly Effects is probably my favorite song here, but I do think the best run comes after the intermission. Noqh appears on 2 more songs after the halfway point. Lil Wop of Horrors is one of my favorites, not because of the verses, which are still great, but I love hearing these 2 dudes sing over this old school piano on the hook, with like a 1940s The Sting Entertainer style beat. Golden Calves and MAD are 2 more standouts towards the end of the album. Overall, I don't think this is one of the most consistent albums here from start to finish, but the stuff that works is amazing. Dump God, The Story of Halloween Homicide. This album is incredibly slept on. I don't know if it's just the title that's informing my listening experience, but this whole thing is scary. The opening track, I'm the Illest Since Michael Jackson, has this diabolical beat, straight out of a hip-hop haunted house. ID killed this beat with this ghostly instrumental, on top of these drums that cut right through it that'll make your bones shiver. Fahim sounds bloodthirsty over the Dracula-esque organs on It's a K2. This album is the closest that we'll ever get to a Dump God horrorcore record. The beats are grimy and the lyrics are grimier, filled with the imagery of a night of haunted homicide. I do think that as the album goes on, it does lose track a bit of that Halloween theme that it started off so hot with. I think if there's one issue here, I think that this album might be a little bit undercooked. For an album with a specific theme, I would have loved to see them really flesh it out to all of its extremes, but for what it is, it's a cool side project from the Dump God. Dump God, The Knocking of Loose. Sadhu Gold is one of the most exciting producers in hip-hop right now. Before this record, I had not been in love with his collabs with Fahim specifically, but this one is a different story. It starts off with the explosive Leave You Frozen Like Elsa, which has this booming bass that sounds like it's straight out of an Onyx record from the 90s. Fahim plays with some cool vocal tricks here too, doubling up his voice on some punchlines to make them hit extra hard. This is one of the rare projects in his catalog where Fahim almost gets outshined by the production. Sadhu puts his foot into every single one of these beats, with each one sounding completely different, but also incredibly cohesive. The whole tape blends a classic, gritty, East Coast 90s feel, while also feeling like the future. The song Mic Wars literally sounds like Fahim having a battle against the feedback from his own microphone. It's so awesome. Dump God, Shot Clock King, Volume 3. Another great entry to the God Fahim and Nicholas Craven canon. This one is cool because it feels like the soundtrack to an 80s sports movie or something. Mr. Microphone Menace and Flex Brolic feel like the sounds of a training montage. World Upside Down feels like what they'd play when our hero hits rock bottom. Then Nonstop gets him back on the right track before Will's Hand when he's about to make that slow motion game-winning shot. And From the Ground Up plays as the credits roll and he celebrates. This stands apart from many of the Nicholas Craven records because there's only one track here where the vocal sample is up front. That track is Love and Hate 2, which gives you everything you'd want from a sequel to their original song with that name. Fahim's lyrics here are reliable without doing too much crazy, and the main standout here is Will's Hand, which revolves around a punchline saying that he's gonna slap you with Will Smith's hand. Supreme Dump Legend, Starlight Episode. Here is another short EP that does a great job of not wasting the listener's time, and really giving a unique listening experience in its 12 minutes of runtime. 16th Chapel is one of my favorite collaborations with Camouflage Monk, with Fahim getting introspective and really going deep on his art and how important it is to him. Overall, this type has a nice light vibe to it, where the beats and the bars really link up to be a very nice listen every time. There's this persisting sense of gratitude and hopefulness on this project that I love. Fahim produces the last 3 tracks himself, with Stars being a fun halfway point, with him wishing on a star for everything that he wants in his life, and shooting for the stars in his hopeful, motivational way of rapping. This whole project is a nice little appetizer, palate cleanser of peaceful beats and pleasant bars, and sometimes that's all you need in life. The Wolf on Wall Street. After Noqh, Fahim's partnership with Your Old Droog is probably my second favorite collaborative partnership within the Dump God family. The Wolf on Wall Street is a great showcase of what these two do well. The beats are extremely smooth and catchy, but simple enough to make sure that each of these two MCs can make their punchlines speak for themselves. All 8 of these songs are super nice, and the standouts are light but frequent. Fahim has a lot of projects in this similar vein, but the consistency of beats and Droog's addition to these vocals sets this one apart as one of the most solid projects in his catalog. This album plays it pretty safe, and that's okay. Of the 3 collaborations between Fahim and Droog, this one feels the most effortless, even if that means that there are less memorable moments because of it. More than anything, I love hearing these two MCs bounce off of each other. This whole tape is just right up my alley. Berserko. This is one of the few times that Fahim links up with the true legendary producer who doesn't usually work within the Dump God realm. And this duo combines to form a great tag team of dynamic modern underground hip hop. Ono brings just enough uniqueness to his production to give this thing a completely fresh feeling, while still feeling true to the Dump God agenda. These beats feel like soundtracks to cinematic samurai flicks, giving Fahim a great bass line to chop up on. Faithful is probably my favorite track here, with this beat that evolves like a free-flowing film with a 3-act structure. Fahim's delivery across this whole tape is a little monotone and lacking in energy, but the bars themselves are filled with life and unrelenting quality. Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap 2. I've sort of lost track at this point, but I think this is the highest Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap record on this ranking. This one is my personal favorite because that opening track, Unfathomable Horror, has one of my favorite beats from last year. This is my favorite kind of Nicholas Craven beat, where the vocal loop rings off in your head and just overtakes the entire song. I love it. The next song, Shogun Jump, has almost the opposite effect, with this chopped up whisper going on in the beat. And even though this isn't my ideal sound from Craven, I do think it gives Fahim a chance to really go in lyrically here. There's no weak tracks on this one, with some real highlights throughout like Mad Life Menace and the title track at the end. In this sea of projects that Fahim and Craven have released over the past few months, they've all reached a consistent high bar of quality, but this is the one that I know that I'll be going back to the most. Notorious Dump Legends Volume 2. This project has such a unique and amazing sound. Noqh is incredible on here, with these gorgeous hooks and unrelenting verses. The project starts with him almost in the middle of a sentence, and the whole thing is filled with these interesting decisions and vocal choices. The verses from Fahim are on the shorter side, but all still dynamic as hell, with him using his limited time to spit all killer, no filler. I do think this project leans way more into Noqh's greatness than Fahim's. It almost feels like he's just a feature at times, but with that said, it's still a great showcase of what he does well. Everybody's Source Code is the only song that Fahim starts out rapping on, but even then his verse gets a little overshadowed by Noqh's repetitive but catchy Everybody hook. The production is very elegant and it makes for a pretty flawless listen from start to finish. I just wish it had a little more Fahim on it. Dump God by Anything's Necessary. Smoke and the God Fahim are a duo that works pretty effortlessly together. Their voices reach a higher register and Smoke brings out a smooth side to Fahim that I really appreciate. And more than anything, I think this project is curated expertly. Much of this tape is produced by Fahim himself, and I really love the beats that he provided here. Fly Away starts it off with another soulful gem that has these two MCs rapping about what they plan to do before they part from this world. Then the next track, THC, gets all the early Dump Gods together for a posse cut featuring Fahim, Smoke, Heem Stogid, and Kung Fu. Fahim in this early 2018 era had so much hunger and tenacity to his rap style that I love so much, even when it's over a more mellow beat. Double Air is one of the hardest songs of his entire career. Fahim raps like he's attacking every word that he says, angry at the listener for even debating not listening to the song. When Fahim uses a flow that's on the faster side, he's able to fit so many words and punchlines into every bar, it's awesome. On a tape like this, where Fahim is doing some of his best spitting, I don't love that he has to share half his time with another MC, but Smoke does very well here with his time in the spotlight. Bredrick Instrumentals. The instrumental projects on this list are always the toughest to rank, but I think this is one of his finest in that regard. There's just such a cool sound to all of these songs, and they all try a little something different to bring some variety to it as well. And that equates to a full listen that's not just a bunch of loops looping around. Truck 1 has a feeling like it's being played during a crime montage in a dope movie. Truck 2 has a vocal sample flipped in a way that I've never really heard before. Truck 3 has this awesome whistle going through it. Truck 4 has the patience of an old man slowly letting his life story seep out of the end of his cigarette. Truck 5 has a playfulness with the horn sample. Truck 6 feels like a showdown of sorts. Truck 7 has another super fun vocal sample that feels nothing like any other flip. Truck 8 feels like a Mexican standoff. Truck 9 is brimming with soul, and Truck 10 ends it off with the most fun loop on the entire thing. Just a super engaging and enjoyable instrumental project straight through. Supreme Dump Legend Mix 7. This is probably the most underrated compilation tape on here. Like I keep saying, these compilation tapes are hard to rank because we've heard every song on here and talked about many of them. But with that being said, this is a great group of songs that are perfect for anyone who's not trying to listen to 140 something albums in a row, just to get a little taste of what the Dump God can offer. Amazing music here. 6 Ring Champ. This is a perfect example of what the Fahim of recent years does well when he's at his best. This feels like a victory lap for him. Fahim's on his championship run with his 6 championship rings, and he's letting the music speak for itself. The production is split between Fahim, Camouflage Monk, and Nicholas Craven, with one produced by Thrasher Wolf for good measure. So the entire soundscape of this project is laid out by people who know exactly how Fahim sounds at his best. This tape feels very low stakes to me. The lyrics and beats are all stuff that we know Fahim does well, never really feeling like it's trying anything too risky, but sometimes all you need is just to listen to something that you know you're gonna like. Love and Hate and Driving Me Crazy have these classic Craven beats, and Fahim knows exactly what to do with them. This whole thing is just so smooth and well put together. Droog is on 3 of these songs as well, which is always nice to hear. Overall, this is just a super well done project, even if it doesn't offer anything outside of what you expect. The Dark Shogun Saga. This is just some good old classic The God Fahim. Nobody raps using samurai imagery better than the Dump God, and this is one of the albums that started it all for him in that way. This album has a good mix of that nobility that he raps with at his best, while also showing a lot of the funny personality that makes listening to 140 something albums so enjoyable. He has this little rant at the beginning of track 3 about how Little Caesars doesn't taste good anymore, and it's just so funny to me. Overall, this album is just the God Fahim in his bag. There's nothing really I would change about it, but there's also nothing really that exceptional in the grand scheme of things. Art Dealer Volume 2. I feel like the Art Dealer series is very underappreciated within the Dump God hierarchy. This one does a great job expanding on the first with some more smooth beats and intentional rhymes that help the listener feel like they're getting some higher quality art than the usual. Kung Fu does a great job with the production on this one. The whole tape has an overall vibe of smooth soul that permeates throughout it. And Fahim takes this laid-back tone and contrasts it with the real technical precision that works extremely well. Fashion Shoppin' is probably my favorite song here with this amazing sample, and Fahim rapping about his unique taste in fashion. I love when he has his verses go right into the hook in a way where they chain together. The whole tape stays consistent with that sense of soulful introspection, but I just think this is one of the most underappreciated and consistent albums on this list. Dump Truck 2. I have a confession to make. I may be running out of words to use in this video. Some albums just sound dope, and it's as simple as that. And this one is great. 6 tracks, all stellar, bars, beats, and dumping. Enough said. Dump Goat. This is one of the most iconic compilations of his career. I think this project is a little mixed in quality since it is so long, but the moments of greatness are some of my favorite moments of hip-hop in recent memory. This shit was cultivated with a hardness that is hard to find anywhere else in the game. I'm Dumpin' starts the project off with one of the most aggressive vocal performances that Fahim gives throughout his entire career. This has a great mix of some of Fahim's greatest dump collaborators, with Evidence, Kung Fu, Heem Stogied, Juju Gotti, and Noqh all adding their greatness to the track list here. 11111 is an iconic Noqh and Fahim collaboration, but my favorite track on here is definitely Who, which is essentially the Dump God national anthem. The rhetorical question hook is so classic, and Fahim starts out his verse by saying, "I clap shit like a poop scooper," and it's one of the funniest moments in hip hop for me. It never fails to crack me up. Songs like Don't Go Summer, Apple Pie, and Third Eye Blazin' even show off the softer and more introspective side to what Fahim does while he's at his best. Like I said, with these compilations, especially one as long as this. I do think there's probably a better place for you to hear all these songs more organically, but with that being said, this is one of the best collections of Dump God music that you'll ever be able to hear, and great for any new listener of his to get a taste of the magic. Dreams of Medina 2. No matter where this one ends up in the rankings, I really do feel like it's an essential listen for the god Fahim. This came during his legendary 2017 run. It's just the ultimate showcase of gritty East Coast underground raps. This has 3 of my favorite collaborations with Noqh on here. The Chic Pull Up, You Shake the Majid has them both dismantling the track with their verses. Night and Day contrasts that song like night and day. Fahim takes all of the rapping duties on this one to show you a more introspective and thoughtful side to his performance, while still bringing the venom. And Noqh adds his own special sauce, providing the hook and covering the Big Mountain classic, Ooh Baby I Love Your Way. I think the beats are the only thing that holds this one back from being a top tier project for me. The production isn't bad, in fact I think at the most times it is pretty great. But in a sea of over 140 albums, the beats on here feel like something I've heard 1,000 times already. The rapping, on the other hand, is a completely different story from the beats. There's a sharpness to both the writing and Fahim's delivery that makes this album so nice to listen to. From a highlight like Memento Mori with Heem Stogid, or an underrated joint like Asan Unique, which has him rapping about the lineage of hip-hop greats that he falls into. This one is definitely in the God Fahim starter pack. Star Truth. I think this is one of the most underrated records of his catalog. I find the maturity of his lyricism so refreshing on this one, and he's just so locked in with his flows on here that it sounds as sharp as ever. It starts off great with Get Rich, Give Back, as a great declaration of Fahim embracing his status as a helpful big brother in the game, and then it continues on with each song having so much purpose with its lyrics, and so much technical skill on display on top of that. Monday Morning is another motivational song to start your week off with, and like I said, I really love when Fahim is at his most inspirational. Shadow Stalker shows a little bit of his darker side, and then Imagination goes right back to it with him rapping about how important it is to have a colorful imagination to be successful. It's so innocent, but it works so well. Imperial Dragon Lord has a hidden Makami feature on here that adds some really cool texture to the track. I do think that if you get to the second half of the album, there's a couple skips for me, but it's all made up for with one of my favorite songs in his whole catalog, Many Ways. This song has one of the fastest flowing verses that Fahim ever spits, and it sounds so fun and unique, and I'll never stop recommending this one to people. Paid in Bull. This is another one of those really great short EPs. I think Leaf Dog does a really great job providing a unique batch of beats for him to rock over. The opening track, Still Not Giving a Fuck, comes equipped with these Gregorian chants and some old school hip hop scratches on the hook that gives it such a unique feel. Fahim is very locked in on this one too. He really makes the most out of this fresh batch of beats. The second track, Samurai Cowboy, feels like the coolest parts of Fahim, channeling both of those worlds, and scratches an itch that can't be found anywhere else within his discography. The scratches maintained throughout the whole project and really gives this a hip hop feel to its core. There's no skips on this one, and even though there's just 4 tracks, I think it holds its own as a dope piece of individual art. Dump Truck 7. This tape does an incredible job at providing a consistent, laid-back, and mellow vibe, while still having a ton of versatility brought in by the stacked list of producers who worked on the record. The first highlight to me is the second track, Trying to Make a Move, which was produced by The Historian. This song has this incredibly soulful vocal sample that lets Fahim wax poetic about his days trying to make greatness happen. And then the very next song, Gem Talk, which was produced by Guru Griff, carries that same vibe, but in a completely different way. This is one of the more unique songs within Fahim's whole catalog, with him floating over this cloudy, new school, almost SoundCloud era sounding beat. And Fahim kills it, making me wish that he rapped over different sounding beats more often. One of the main draws of this album is that it's one of the few times that the god Fahim raps over Earl Sweatshirt production, which is very cool to hear. The Earl produced Location State of Mind has these grand horns that are the perfect backdrop for Fahim to rap about these lofty ideas and finding his purpose. I love Fahim because his subject matter never really strays from who he is at his core, even when the beat is giving you something totally different than what you'd expect. The Thrasher Wolf produced Making Money is similar to the Guru Griff song, with this glitchy, spacey, cloud-hovering beat that lets Fa get a little funky over it. The production on this album is really where it shines, from the super smooth JLVSN track Ozai's Revenge, to the Fahim-produced drums and sax, which is comprised of quite literally only drums and saxophone. This is a super unique and consistent album, but if there's one thing holding it back, the lyrics are good but not all that memorable. Dump God, Shot Clock King. The God Fahim and Nicholas Craven's music will hopefully be what I hear at Heaven's Gate someday. Their collaborations always reach the highest bar of beauty that I can find in hip-hop today. Every one of these beats is the pinnacle of soul meeting hip-hop. Fahim sounds very focused on here too, with each of the songs filled with his creative words of wisdom. This duo has released so many albums together. This one specifically feels like one of their best and most cohesive. It's not easy to single out certain songs over the others because I feel like they're all so great. If I had to choose, I'd say Big George Bombs is probably the track filled with the most style from these two guys. There's also two Your Old Droog features which add some gravity and differentiation in the lyrics here. This whole tape is nice. Soul Eater. We're at the point now when really all these albums are nothing short of spectacular to me. This one has Fahim as the main producer and main rapper, and he brings his A game from the opening track Jack Kevorkian, which is a very underrated collaboration with Makami. Fahim spits this vicious verse on this song that lets you know that he's not playing around. There's a real creative splash that Fahim works with on this one that gives the whole tape so much style and sets it apart from a lot of the other ones that we've talked about. Lotto is another cool one where his vocal delivery just sounds so filled with personality. He even shouts out Griselda on this one, which makes it a pretty sweet time capsule. The song Mandela Effect is one that I'm always pleasantly surprised when it comes on. Oddly enough, I always forget that this song exists, but whenever I hear it, I'm always so happy to remember how much fire Fahim used to rap with in these days. Every line on this tape is delivered different than the last, with so much stank to it. I love it. I think overall this tape has such a unique and life-filled feel to it. I don't listen to this one nearly enough, and maybe that comes down to the fact that as bright as some of these songs are, I don't know if any of them are in my personal top tier for Fahim, but overall this shit's fire. Dump God Episode 4. This is just some dope Dump God music right here. The first track, Dump Tour, is one of my favorites in the whole Dump series. In the middle of the track, he breaks out a gnarly rhyme scheme, rhyming ass whooping, mask pushing, trash pussy, gas rookie, last hooky, last cookie, ass pussy, overlook me, rap shit took me, and supreme sussy. And trust me saying it does not give it justice. This song rocks. On Art Dealer, he raps about what separates him from his fellow MCs. Him and his Dump God comrades move different in the industry, selling their music like art dealers instead of independent musicians, so it's cool hearing him put his strategy to wax like that. Camouflage Monk produces the first half of this record, and it's some of my favorite work of his. Diplomatic Virus has this epic beat that's perfect for Fahim and Heem Stogie to annihilate. They both have some hilarious lines on here that are hard as hell. This album also has 3 very underrated Makami verses. I do think that this tape has one pretty clear skip to me with track 7, Quicken, but besides that, this reaches a very high bar of quality that not just any Fahim fan should seek out, but really any fan of great hip hop. Dump Olympics Volume 1. This is a 5-track EP where 3 of the beats are handled by Nicholas Craven and the other 2 by Fahim. And I just love how classy this whole project sounds. The samples in these beats are made with the essence of elegance, and Fahim raps with such nobility on this project. The opening track has these nice horns that sound like we're listening to the opening ceremonies to a century-old Olympic Games. Butterfly Lady has Fahim laying down this really wonderful hook, where he has one version of himself chanting some of his lyrics, then another version singing nicely in a high-pitched voice, contrasting the other style. This is one of the few times that he really prioritizes the aesthetic beauty of his sonics over the other skill sets that he has in his tool belt. Even Shadow Danger has a much darker and more intense sound, still has the sense that it's just so aware of how nice it sounds. There's really nothing I would change about this project, it's just a perfect little specimen of the Dump Olympic sound. Duck Season Tiger Style. The second Duck Season project steps up everything about the first, even if it may not be as classic as the original. Bone Straight starts it off with a song that has an amazing Fahim verse, already outshining all of his verses on the previous record. Both MCs are incredible on this project, using different rhyme schemes and flows on each track to keep you on your toes. Fahim specifically sounds so hungry on this one, and even though I think this inherently still feels slightly more like Noqh is running the show, Fahim is right there with him at the head of every track. There's so many great moments within the production too. The whole thing has an overall sense of cool that would in theory be typical for a Dump God project, but there's a few moments on here that really separate this into a higher class. Shakespeare's has this almost villainous undertone to it, and Love Is Love flips a vocal sample in a way that I've really never heard. It sounds like it's capable of being annoying, but somehow finds that line and becomes something very enjoyable. I really want to stress how much each of these MCs play with their flow on this record. Each song comes with new ideas and focus points, and really makes the whole thing breeze by when you're listening to it. I'd personally call this album amazing, so it's pretty crazy that it's this low on the list here, but I don't think it's necessarily essential the God Fahim listening. Adamantium Dojo. This is one of the first Fahim projects that I ever heard, so it definitely has a classic feeling to me whenever I listen to it. That all starts with the song Deadpool, which has the tenacious lyricism that Fahim brings at his best over this ancient feeling beat. It's always been one of my favorite songs of his, even if the subject matter itself doesn't cover that much ground. Fire in the Abbot's Temple is honestly a skip for me sometimes, but I do think it's absolutely hilarious. Starting off the song by saying, "I tossed a bird off a wire into the mouth of a bigger bird," that line always amuses me. Jesse James is an all-time great collaboration between Noqh and Fahim. They channel the Wild Wild West over this Sergio Leone sounding beat, rapping about robbing stagecoaches with an intensity that only they can bring. Most of the songs on here have this ancient feel to them, in the best way possible, feeling like they were almost excavated from an archaeological dig in an adamantium dojo. The Ritual and Devocalizer each take a more laid-back approach with the beat choice, but they give Fahim a chance to contrast that with some truly ripping verses. Smoke and Soul are some of the smoother songs within his catalog, and Wisdom Body Hottie closes it out with a rare Fahim love song, making this a great full listen. The Ineffable Conflict of Roosevelt Creek. This album has always stood out to me because of its unique name that feels like it has so much history behind it. I think this album does a great job of mixing classic Dump Gottian joints that are all about punchlines and aggression, while still having some songs on here that are about some things that Fahim feels very passionate about. The opening two tracks perfectly capture this dichotomy. Excalibur is a song that just has Fahim dumping bars in your head, and then Eat to Live is one of the most memorable tracks of his entire career, rapping entirely about eating healthy and persuading people to live a healthier dietary lifestyle. This song has always jumped out to me as such a confident, personal declaration of something that means a lot to Fahim, and I love getting a look into his true passions like this, which is a little rare for him. Makhami appears on 3 songs of the track list, with the most notable being his beautiful hooks on What's the Matter and Paper Cuts. A lot of Fahim's lyrical subject matter revolves around the paranoia and effects that living a life such as his can bring you, which makes this overall feel like a very personal album for him. I do think that there might be a couple moments on here where the production gets a little generic, but overall, I really love this record. Dump God, Ultra Instinct. This is one of the few records on here that is entirely produced by the God Fahim, and he raps on it with no features at all. So this is one of the most true displays of his artistry that we have. This record really shows off his versatility on the boards, while showing his consistency on the mic. Ride Slow feels like the inner thoughts of the God Fahim while he slowly drives through the city, and it leads right into the more lively, almost 80s inspired beat for Stole My Heart. which has him reminiscing over the moments that led to his broken heart. The latter is another one of my favorites, sounding like it came straight out of a 70s funk album. Massacres has one of my favorite beats that Fahim has ever made, with this super unique sample that sounds like a train whistle, and then So True takes it back with horns that sound like they were plucked directly from the 1930s. Lyrically, this album is very good, but I don't think it does anything too spectacular that you can't find on some other records. But the production takes it and makes it one of my favorite underrated gems on this whole list. And Lone Ranger closes it out with another lively 80s sounding banger that always leaves me with nothing but great memories of this tape. Dump Olympics Free Falls. I've been listening to this one over and over, trying to come up with the words to describe why I like it so much. And even though the words escape me, every time I listen to it, I always get drawn back in. I actually think the cover art really speaks to me about this project, because I've been skydiving once and it was scary as hell, but also exhilarating. And that's kind of the feeling I get when I listen to this project. Just like skydiving, this album is short in time, but when you land, when it's finally done, you have this feeling like you just accomplished something that makes your life more full. This album feels full to me. The skits get you in the vibe, but never takes you away from the music. Fahim himself is clearly locked in on the mic. All of the hooks and verses are extremely well written and play off the beats so nicely, even though the beats are pretty varied in vibe. Cell Games starts it out with Sadhu Gold's spacious and breathy production that has Fa and Jay Nice rapping aggressively. For the Brain and the harmonies feel like Fahim free falling in the sky, able to appreciate life's true beauty. Super Dopalicious is another one of the smoother joints of his career, with a hook that transcends what you'd usually find in the Dump universe. Then Gold Medals gives the album a circular ending with another Jay Nice verse on a dark and incredibly hard joint. Dollar Menu. This is one of the most iconic collaborations between Noqh and Fahim. The beats are so dynamic, and this duo rattles off some of the best rhymes of the past 10 years on here. Their chemistry is off the charts, going back and forth like an old school group like Run DMC, but also they bring it to the modern day to make something that has never been done before. There's a part of me that wishes that this was either longer or just featured a little more Fahim, because I feel like Noqh definitely has more places to shine, but the Fahim produced Smoke Signal is one of my favorite beats on the album, with such a unique old school, maybe even Native American feel to it. But unfortunately, Fahim doesn't even rap on that song. Luckily, when Fahim does rap on here, it ends up being some of the most fire that he's ever spit. The main event on this record is the closing track Nardwar, which honestly might be my #1 pick for the greatest verse from Fahim ever. He rattles off like 5 or 6 different flows and rhyme schemes within one verse. It's truly something to behold. Anyone who has anything bad to say about Fahim as a rapper, just point them to this song and it will immediately prove them wrong. Shadows Over Nazareth. This is a very early Fahim project released way back in 2015, and this was entirely written and produced by him, so it's a very raw and pure version of his style, very focused on samurai imagery and rapping from the point of view of a timeless warrior. Shogun was featured also on that Smoke project I talked about earlier, but it really is one of the most classic Fahim songs ever, with this violent flow and this beat that sounds like it's straight out of feudal Japan. The attitude that he raps with on this whole project is so fun and exciting, and the beats do such a good job to craft a scene for him to paint on top of. I do think there's a few too many skits on here, something that Fahim really relied heavily on early in his career that I don't think works all the time, but the music itself is great. Whirlwind Living is interesting because I feel like it shows Fahim using a flow that feels much more reminiscent to what he does later in his career, so that's cool to hear. Death's Blessing is another awesome joint that blends a smooth beat with some aggressively fire vocals. Overall, I think every song on this album is great, and if you just take out a few of those extra long skits that don't really add anything, this is a perfect example of early Fahim. The Ides of Summer. The god Fahim and Al Divino had such a short creative partnership, so hearing Divino open this record up perfectly set the tone for another underrated gem of late 2010s underground mastery. When it comes to the god Fahim, the rapper, this might honestly be the most complete project that you'll get from him. Each song feels unique in the way that he delivers his lines, with these different eccentricities with his flows and delivery. There's so many funny quotables in here that really pop because he puts so much emphasis on every line. This is another one that I think is severely underrated simply because it's not found anywhere on streaming. It's incredible how much of his catalog and some of his best stuff is unknown to most people just because they won't go the extra step in searching it out. I think of all the albums in this top portion of the ranking, this might be the least essential. Even though I do love this record, and I think it's some of his most efficient work, I wouldn't say that this has any of my favorite songs of his. Synchro. This whole album has a classy feeling to it, with beats plugged from the simplest of instrumentals. A piano here, a string here, a woodwind there. The opening track B7 is one of the most underrated collaborations between Noqh and Fahim, with them both dismantling this perfect sample of I'm not even sure what it is, maybe an oboe or something. Anything is Possible is another standout, with Fahim giving this motivational rap that a lot of people need to hear, calling out all the crazy things that happen in this world, like Trump becoming president, or a man walking on the moon. And if those things can happen, then anything can. Hard Rock follows that up with a similar sentiment of betting on yourself and winning. On this one, he rapped over these incredible horns that aren't too showy, but set the perfect ambiance for a smoky night of reminiscence. This project is like a who's who of great Fahim producers, with beats from Irie, Thrasher Wolf, Benji Socrates, M Stacks, and more. I really love every single beat on here because they all have that classy and calm vibe, and work perfectly for what Fahim's able to do on the mic. The song One Non-Turner is probably the best song on the album. M Stacks lays down these knocking drums, and Fahim spits one of my favorite flows. This whole project is awesome, go check it out. Dollar Menu 2. The Dollar Menu series consistently reaches the highest bar of quality that you could ask for. This one specifically is a classic, with some of the hardest raps spit in the last decade. Fahim starts it off with the solo joint Acid Reflux. You can hear the hate in his voice on this song, like he's spitting venom at every MC in the world at once. This is up there with some of the best rapping of his career, fully equipped with memorable punchlines and a surplus of shifting schemes for his rhyming. It's a short one, with one of those 8 tracks being an interlude, and Fahim not even appearing on every song. So it does fall just shy of the top of this list, but if you're looking for just some great hip hop, this is some of the best you'll be able to find. The best way that I could describe the way these two rap on this thing is violent. Hard would be an understatement. A page out of the book of Bredrick. Bredrick Douglass is an alias that Fahim has used only a few times throughout his career, but I always love when he does. It just feels like he has so much fun with this project, almost like he's playing a character, really letting himself be free with his delivery and his choices. Overall, it's just a super fun record. Thankful 7 is a perfect song to open it up. It's very heartfelt, almost like Fahim's Oscar acceptance speech, rapping about all the things he's thankful for. And even on a song like this that's very earnest, you can still hear just a little extra oomph from Bredrick in there. Legend Weed is unhinged in a way that only Bredrick could do it. After all, he only smokes Legend Weed, so this song brings an attitude and energy that he doesn't reach really on any other song of his career. This project has the production split between Nicholas Craven and Fahim, arguably the two producers in this world who best work with Fahim as a rapper. So the beats are all very nice, straight through to the end. The Garden and Family switch it up with two of the smoothest beats of 2017. Even though Fahim is taking on this other persona for the record, he still has some incredibly personal and introspective bars on here, a duality that I always appreciate and makes this album one that I always come back to. The Yad Fahim. The third and final collaboration between Your Old Droog and the God Fahim is one of the biggest and best collab tapes of their entire catalog. There's just something so great about hearing two MCs at their best, giving it their all, and making each other better in the process. I do think the two Wolf on Wall Street tapes feel a little more like they're made from Fahim's DNA, as opposed to this one, which has a little more of a Droog feeling to it. But with that being said, the music is incredible. Icy Shop is a remarkable opener, with each MC getting their own beat, to show what they do best on. When these two link up, it's like a punchline factory, bombarding you with quotable line after quotable line. Many of the song titles and lyrics are basketball themed, which is cool for me as a longtime hoop fan. This whole project is just filled with so much style that it could only come from these two specific MCs. This project is on the longer side within the confines of this discography, but it does a great job for never staying in one place for too long. It almost feels like a basketball game, with runs happening where it gets more fast-paced or aggressive, then it'll slow down to show more nuances of the game. Dump Goat 2. It feels kind of blasphemous having this over the original Dump Goat, but this was one of my most listened to projects of last year. Fahim's had different strengths in every era of his career, and while I feel like his consistency has gone down a little bit in the last couple years, a compilation of his best music from the era has some of the best hip-hop that you'll hear these days. This is one of the longer tapes on this album, coming in at 19 tracks and almost an hour in length, but his lyricism is so locked in from start to finish. That original Dump Goat may have a couple higher highs, but its consistency is what drags it down, and this album moves me every second of the way. The beats do a great job of providing some sonic variety to the track list, while never being too showy and still letting the MCs be the main event. Belly of the Beast was one of my favorite songs of last year, with this grand feeling that makes you want to get up and grind, even when you wake up in the midst of madness. Lonely Girl is another one that I'm pretty sure I've talked about earlier, but it really shows his versatility in making a much softer and more intimate song. This tape overall does a great job of mixing the technical titan of Fahim the rapper with Fahim the conscious MC, who has a lot of reflecting to do with each song. The run from Stuck in My Dumping Ways until the end does a great job at highlighting every facet of his skill set, and Vision of Madness ended off with a relentlessly hard track that feels reminiscent of his 2017 era of samurai style songs. Fool's Fallacy. This is one of the most interesting projects on the whole list. When Fahim first started releasing a bunch of music around 2015, his style was pretty close to what it is today, but Fool's Fallacy is the most raw version of what we ever got. Released all the way back in 2013, this mixtape is a great showing of who Fahim was in a past life. He still was rapping about navigating a life of crime with nobility, but his voice and style was completely different. There's a softness to his delivery on this album, and I don't mean that in a bad way. His words are understated, like he's calmly flipping through his journal, whispering rhymes to himself as he finds his voice. The intro even plays audio of him saying a poetic prayer, showing us a more versatile look into who he is as a person before he finds his confidence later on. Even at this young age, Fahim was a tremendous lyricist, with such a knack for weaving interesting rhymes together. The track Dead Presidents has a few moments where the rap itself is of the same quality as he would make later on, but the way it's delivered sounds like it's coming from a completely different rapper. At 15 tracks long, it is on the longer side for a Fahim record, but it kept me right with it the entire time. The production is all solid, with this chill, laid-back aura to it. He even raps over a flip of Nas's Memory Lane on Memory Mental, and he does it justice. I really do think that Fahim has gotten better as he's gotten older, but his youth on this record makes it feel novel. Any flaws that I could point out just adds to its charm. Whether you're a die-hard Dump God fan, or interested in hearing how he got his start, or someone who's not in love with his current style, I'd highly recommend giving this one a listen, and you might be surprised at how great and different it is. Supreme Dump Legend Volume 4. This is some classic Fahim. It starts out with the gripping Can It Be with one of my favorite Camouflage Monk beats. These first two tracks are both produced by Monk, and they bring an energy that I was craving on those few projects early on that he produced that I wasn't too much of a fan of. These two beats are filled with so much personality and fill Fahim with life while he raps on them. Jay Nice has an incredibly hard verse on the Dark Arm and Hammers, and Fahim is punchlining right alongside him. Fahim is really in his bag with his quotables on this tape, saying that he'll wet you like a 9-year-old's bed, and that he speaks Guapanese. Death metal was a clear standout here. Fahim sounds like he's the Grim Reaper calling you to death. There's an unhinged darkness to this one that makes it work so well for me. Supreme Dump Legend, Volume 2. A lot of people who hate on Fahim just don't understand the swagger that he brings when he's at his best. This album specifically just sounds so cool straight through. The opening track Harp literally sounds like a new age extension of The Godfather, with Fahim sounding like Fahim Corleone, with some of the most confident and cutting bars of the whole Supreme Dump Legend series. Lil Wearden easily has my 3 favorite beats on here, with the opener I just talked about, Soul Disco, and Sleepy Hollow, which sounds like something beautiful from heaven that had one too many, and now it's a little drowsy, passing out mid-song. The beats on here all maintain this sense of cool, but also have a little something off about them, which I really love. Then it ends with this crazy joint called For Show. It has Makami, Juju Gotti, and Fahim rapping over this crazy vocal chant that always gets me going. This tape is my favorite of the Supreme Dump Legend series, and I highly recommend you check it out. Dump God, the Dump God album that started it all. This album is hard as hell. It has all the rawness that I love from the early Fahim records, but also has a confidence that bleeds through my speakers every time. The opening track, Sagat, puts the pressure on as Fahim just annihilates it over a great Sadu Gold beat. In fact, all the producers on here killed it, with beats from Earl Sweatshirt, Bronze Nazareth, K Slugga, ID, Fahim, Wearden, Black Noise, and Navy Blue. Bell Ringer is a severely underrated Noqh and Fahim collab, with both artists killing their verses and Fahim going crazy with his flows towards the end of the verse. And that leads right into Imperials, which just has this classic Dump God feeling, with this great vocal sample, and Fahim rapping about his strategies of warfare. Samurai's Cup of Tea, which is that track I mentioned earlier, which was produced by Black Noise and Navy Blue, usher in a more laid back and smooth portion of the album that sounds amazing on the back of the harder first half of the project, because the bars are still there and they're hard as hell, but the production is the perfect opposing force to the vocals. This section lasts through the Earl Sweatshirt produced Don't Go Summer, which is one of my favorite songs in that vein, getting introspective about the passage of time and his purpose in life. If you look up the God Fahim in the dictionary, this is the album that would show up. This is the base Dump God here. Dollar Menu 3, Dump God Edition. This is the longest Dollar Menu record, and I feel like this is the one that gives Fahim the most chance to be his unique self and put his mark on the series. It opens up with 11111, giving Fahim the floor to get into his supreme numerology and his reasoning for selling his high art for high value. The first 3 Dollar Menu records were all made in the same year, and by this point Noqh and Fahim were at their best and most confident. This actually might be the Dollar Menu album that I've listened to the least. I think the highs from Noqh on those first 2 speak to me more, but listening to this record specifically with a Fahim state of mind has me appreciating this thing in a whole new way. His verses are constructed with a creativity and confidence that's exactly what I love from him. No 2 of these verses feel the same to me, and they all give something that only he could provide. SPF 50 has one of the most fun and aggressive verses of the whole Dollar Menu series, and it's sandwiched between the much slower and more toned down Suspended Anime and Chase Lounge. The latter is one of the more spiritual songs of his career, with Fahim contemplating the place that God has in his life, if any at all. There's a few Noqh solo joints, which is a negative for the purposes of this list, but it's followed up with the classic Dop Records diss track called Grope Records / Duppy Media. And that song is just such a cool time capsule of the greatness within the drama of modern underground hip hop. Dump God, Episode 5. This is another one that I don't have too much to say about, but it's just some early Dump God dope shit. Fahim feels like he's having a lot of fun on this record, trying out some different delivery styles. Track 1 ends with him chanting Dump God like a battle cry. He gets conversational at the end of Dragnet, using a high-pitched voice to play somebody questioning his word choice. And then Fahim just talks his shit and dumps on him. And then on Chocolate Clouds, Fahim channels his drunken self, with every beat of his flow hitting a note of the beat, making for a really cool and unique sound. And then it ends on the severely underrated Noqh featured track called Maxwell. And then one of my favorites that I'm sure I talked about on another album called Apple Pie. Dump God, Stock Lord. This is one of the longest records on the whole list. but it certainly doesn't feel like it. The whole thing highlights the smoother and more laid-back style to Fahim's sound, and despite its length, is actually one of his most consistent and cohesive to date. I'm honestly losing track a bit of which of these albums are compilations and which ones are originals, but this definitely has a few tracks that I've talked about elsewhere on this list, specifically the first 2 tracks, Lonely Girl and Grassroots. But honestly, these songs are so good that I just don't even care at this point, which may make me a bad ranker, but I'm 100 and something albums in, so let me keep dumping. To the inexperienced ear, you may not be able to differentiate between the different eras of Fahim, the artist, but this one pretty clearly states his place as one of the defining records of his early 2020s run. He even has 4 tracks featuring Droog on here, making this fit right in along with the Dumpyod collaborations that they were dropping around this time. Overall, I just love the sound of this thing, and even though it all has a very pleasant vibe to it, the rapping from Fahim is as good as you can ask for, bringing energy every time to contrast the laid-back beats. Soul Dust. It's rare that you'll find an all-original 15-track album within this discography, but this one breaks through and shows that Fahim can do a lot more than put together those quick 20-minute EPs. This album is so consistent and enjoyable. The whole thing has this wavy feeling to it, courtesy of the production, and Fahim drops gems of knowledge on every track. The entire project feels like a dream. It starts off with the warning of beware of trick knowledge that gets you off balance with a beat that almost feels like hypnosis. The first few tracks are pretty mellow in tone, but that all flies out the window when you get to critical thinking, which feels like it was cobbled together from discarded noises to make an off-kilter banger from the Dump Factory. Beautiful Mind is my go-to track on here. The Architect provides a beat that calls for a very smooth head nod to go along with Fa, who's as locked in as ever, rapping about how he navigates life and his honor code. A Life of Rhyme follows that right up with another perfect song where he contemplates life's great questions. He writes some really catchy hooks on this album too. Military Press gets the aggression back with this gnarly staccato flow that falls right in the middle of one of the hardest verses of his career, spanning 3 minutes straight. Overall, this tape has such a great mix of the softer, more introspective moments with the hardest of hard, and together it becomes a wonderful unit. Eyes of War. This, in my opinion, is possibly the #1 most underrated album on this whole list. This is from 2016, so it's a very young, early Fahim record that does everything I love from that younger version of him. And Gyala Point provides an awesome batch of beats. The opening track, Fields of Fire, shows the fire that young Fahim had within him and really sets the tone for the album. The production on here is very cinematic, with each song feeling like an old school Italian crime movie or something. Fahim goes crazy on guillotines, and honestly there's no song on here where I wouldn't consider his verse elite. Gallows Thief has him using this flow that would immediately shut down all the Fahim haters if they heard it. Gyala Point mixes a bunch of scratches throughout here, which gives this such a classic hip-hop feeling. And all in all, this has some of my favorite writing of Fahim's career. Even when he's just rapping about crimes and sending threats, it's done with so much artistic precision that makes this whole thing incredible. The Myth Who Never Quit. Nicholas Craven has released more albums with the God Fahim than any other artist alive, and this is the one that started it all. I feel like on every one of their albums that these two have released since then, they've been trying to recapture the greatness of what this tape is able to accomplish. It doesn't try anything too ambitious, but that's the exact glory of it. It's just these two at their sharpest and most pure for what their styles are able to be. As much as I love Craven, I think sometimes his beats can be so contagious that they often overthrow the lyrics and become the main event of some of the tracks. That doesn't happen at all on this one. Each of his beats provides the perfect backdrop of grim gravity that lets Fahim do some incredible work over. There's a clarity to Fahim's delivery on here that makes for some truly god-tier MCing. His lyrics build himself up as the myth who never quit, with each song, almost being like a thesis for why he's the dopest. Hustlin', Strugglin', Survivin' is a great example of Craven looping up some heavenly beautiful soul sample, but having it be complementary to the story that Fahim is laying out for the listener. The Last Samurai does something similar, but with a much grander feeling. I also want to give a shout out to a couple of great tracks with hilarious names. My rhyme's tight like OJ's glove, and your music's like Squidward's clarinet. I love this record. Dump Legend 2. There are really two types of the God Fahim records. Either it will be a full project with someone else to combine their skills and make an amalgamation of what each artist does well, or we'll have some of these tapes where he compiles the best producers in the game to give him a soundtrack to go off on. Dump Legend 2 is one of the best examples of that second version. This thing has production from Knowledge, Craven, Preservation, Camouflage Monk, Sadhu Gold, Evidence, and more. Each beat captures the essence of hard, and Fa got the same memo. The opener gnashing of the teeth sees Fa rapping these verses and hooks that feel like a dump life nursery rhyme, following the bouncing ball to a gunfight. You can always tell when Fahim is locked in lyrically, because his unique style of delivery is utilized on the hooks to play off of his verses, and it equates to these full songs of greatness. Bag Lunches has one of my favorite Evidence beats. It's like 90% drums with a little bit of horns to grandify it at the end of every few bars. Weeks or Months has Fahim coming to terms with the passage of time over a magical Nicholas Craven beat. This is a song topic we've heard Fa tackle a few times over the years, and this is the best example of it. If you're a new listener to Fahim who's trying to figure out where to start, I'm not sure how you got this far in the video, but you can do much worse than starting here. Dump God Reloaded. When I first decided that I would be ranking all of the God Fahim's albums, this was the first one that I downloaded, so it has a special place in the Dump God canon for me. This feels like the prime example of what new school the God Fahim can bring you. Makhami and Your Old Droog each have multiple features here, and they always bring out the best in Fahim. Somehow, after over 100 and something projects, Fahim is still finding new ways to impress me. The aggression that you hear on most early Fahim records won't be found here, but what you will find is an MC whose confidence oozes through the speakers. Even on the songs that have more audacious production, Fahim's delivery is laid back but purposeful. Every bar is deliberate, with no filler in sight. Nothing Comes Free is probably my favorite joint here. Jay Nice hops in to provide both a verse and a hook, which is very rare. Lyrically, the song The Finisher is fucking crazy. Fahim's flow feels reminiscent of some of the stuff he did in the Dollar Menu days, just rolling through like a snowball, getting more impressive as it goes. I think this project's main strength is that it shows the full range of what Fahim is capable of, and each producer brings a different vibe to help him get there. Craven has the smooth, soulful beats. Fahim produces himself for the more laid-back and feel-good joints. Sadhu Gold gets him in his more experimental bag. Wino Willie channels the darker side of the Dump God. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but Zinakami has the two best beats here with these piano-filled grand displays of hip-hop mastery. The Legend of Brederick Douglass. Brederick Douglass returns with a severely underrated album that is produced entirely by Fahim. I always love when he takes on the persona of Brederick. I just feel like he has so much more fun when he's playing this part. It always sounds more free and more unhinged. A Day of Brederick feels like the Dump God equivalent to Ice Cube's Today Was a Good Day. The whole tape has such a fun vibe to it. Dump Truck Brederick is hilarious. He breaks down in the middle of the song to get mad at somebody for bringing him Sprite instead of ginger ale. Production-wise, Fahim always keeps it in the pocket and just in the right spot for him to rock over lyrically. Some of these songs did appear on other projects that I've already talked about, but at this point I've kind of given up caring about that. This is straight up just one of my favorite collections of songs that Fahim has ever given us, and long live Brederick Douglass. Dollars and Cents. This is one of my favorite albums on the list, where Fahim works entirely with one producer. The architect is someone who he's worked with a good amount over the years, but on this one he fully architects the bass work for one of the smoothest and most enjoyable Fahim albums out. This album overall just has a classic feel to it. Not just classic like Dump God shit, but classic like I'm listening to an extension of someone who made music in the 70s or something. What's Left Is to Come Together is a prime example of this, with this beautifully sampled hook that falls right between Fahim and Noqh verses, making it feel like that 70s singer was right there in the booth with them. Overall, this album just has so many songs that I would consider some of my favorites from Fahim. The saxophone riddled Until We All Free, None of Us Are Free, to the other mock appearances on Till the Wheels Fall Off. The samples on Take It Easy and Reform let Fahim bear his soul over them. Lyrically, I'd say this album is much more socially conscious than his usual batch, while still having its fair share of him talking shit. It's honestly the same mix as the album title. He's still rapping about making dollars and getting money, but he's also trying to make you think and make sense of the world. This won't be the most unique Fahim record you'll ever hear, but it may be the most enjoyable. After every dark day comes sunshine. In listening to over 140 albums from one artist, I'd be lying if I didn't say that a lot of these records bled into each other. But this album specifically has always stood out as a one of one for me. Fahim rarely gets features from singers on his songs, so the opening track, Let the Flowers Pass, immediately stands out. Maya Huyana hops on to make this one of the most beautiful songs in his entire discography, providing background vocals focusing on adding to what Fahim is saying, rather than just hopping in for a hook and then dipping. Even though she only appears on one song, her presence sets the tone for this album to be something that's more focused than most of his other records. Even on a track like The Fallen, which has Fahim rapping about his fallen comrades, it's in a way that we've never heard him do it before. He just feels like he has such purpose on this record, both aesthetically and with his subject matter. The production has this beauty that brings out the best in his lyrics. There's no features on here with the exception of the singer on the first track, so this is all Fahim, even with the beats. Songs like They Laugh When You Fall, Don't Count Your Chickens Before They Hatch, and A Chance and a Choice are some of my favorite beats that he's ever produced, perfectly capturing the pleasantness that this album brings to me. Lyrically, it ranges from cautionary tales from Fahim to words of motivation, and everything has a positive spin on it. I'm sure this could turn a lot of negative people off, but I consider myself a very positive person, so this feels right up my alley and always hits me in the right mood. Dump Olympics, Wide Berth. This is one of the most balanced records that these two have released together, and I think Fahim really shows himself as someone who can out-rap anybody on this thing. He comes out guns blazing on Mario Lemieux with an amazing solo track. Formage follows that up with an incredible Juju Gotti assisted joint that shows everybody what this duo is capable of. The production on here is shared by the god Fahim and Thrasher Wolf, a producer who I've really grown to love throughout my process of listening to all these records. He has such a great feeling for the vibe and overall coolness that Fahim works best in, and he always hits that register. This album is some of the most beautiful production that I've heard in the Dump universe, and they know exactly what to do with it, mixing all types of flows in the pot to make a new concoction of greatness that only their two skill sets could make together. Every single song in here is perfect to me. Live and Let Dump. The god Fahim has a lot of albums with a lot of different producers, but for some reason this one with M-Stax always stood out from the pack for me. M-Stax has the best drums of any producer that Fahim has ever worked with. This whole shit knocks. I also love the personality of this record. The girl comes on in the start and makes it so funny, with her complimenting both of the artists and trying out her version of the god Fahim's ad-libs. Her hopping in at various points of the record to throw in a za-za-za-za-za in the background for Fahim makes this such a cohesive and fun listen. And combined with M-Stack's great beats on here, Fahim really just has to do his thing, and this record always becomes one of my favorites when I listen to it. It just feels like some classic hip-hop. The lyrical subject matter doesn't really break new ground for Fahim, but he just rips through this whole thing, only really taking a break for one interlude and then getting right back to work. This was released around the time that I was first falling in love with his music, and I always felt like this was Fahim at his most locked in. I really love every song here, but I do want to give a special shout out to Behind the Curtains, which feels like something that would rock during a training montage in a sports movie, and Last Supper, which is straight up just one of the smoothest things that has ever hit my ears. Notorious Dump Legends. This is my favorite full collaboration between Makami and the god Fahim. This record showcases just how dynamic these two are as a duo. These two are dump legends. There's really no one else who could do what they do, especially together. I love this record so much specifically because it highlights the differences between these two acts. Mott gets in his singing bag, crooning on the hook with many of these songs, giving each track a layered, velvety finish to the classy production, whereas Fahim is on his noble wordsmith mode, taking every verse he has and running with it. Fahim produced about 3/4 of this record, with the remaining produced by Earl Sweatshirt, The Architect, Sadhu Gold, and Craven, so the sonic foundation of this album is built on some of the finest beats around. This whole tape feels like ancient scripture, passed down from kings and noblemen of centuries before. Never before have I heard rap about getting the bag sound so mythical. This duo has a great way of making their music feel grand, bringing the feeling of high-value art to underground hip-hop. This will always be the gold standard for collaborations between the Dump Gods for me. The Dark Shogun Saga, Volume 2. Going from one of the most refined and pristine-sounding albums to one of the most raw. We as underground fans always rave about Mach-Hammy's 2017, but we need to take a minute to appreciate just how remarkable Fahim did in that same year. This record has some of the hardest shit that you'll find in his discography. Similar to the last one, this feels centuries old but still timeless. The sample of the, I guess, ancestral flutes on Big Trouble and Little Caesars feels like we're in feudal Japan, and Fahim and Ichiban Hashface are ready to take us to war against a rival sect of samurai. The production is all amazing here, and as a rapper you may not hear Fahim ever more locked in than this. He sounds angry, like he just read The Art of War and he's ready to unleash on everybody. There are songs like $800 Soup and Blue Jazz where he just goes in, unraveling multiple different flows and styles of delivery that just keep on attacking. The lyrics have a good mix of technical warfare combined with personal anecdotes from living a dump life. Fahim's usual cohorts are here to feature when needed, and I just feel like this album is curated expertly, where the features all get their moment to add their specific spice. Fahim has so much room to breathe on this album and show who he is as an MC. The Tragedy of Shogun. I always view this as a sister album for the one that will eventually be my number one. It's effortless form at this point. This is some of the coolest sounding hip hop that I've ever heard. The beats really caught my ear when I first heard them. There's a soul and a swagger to each of these beats that always hits me in the right way. As the World Turns starts out with probably my number one favorite Camouflage Monk beat ever. Every time Fahim raps over a sax sample, it just becomes one of the smoothest things you'll ever hear. The following track, Dashiki in the White House, carries on that smoothness and gives Fahim and Mach a chance to embrace their ancestors and talk their shit all the way to the Oval Office. This is another 2017 masterclass, and Fahim raps with that same ferocity and freedom. Yoshimitsu is a great example of his style when he was younger. Quite simply, it's a verse that he would never spit today, because he's matured a lot as an MC, but sometimes I just love hearing that young, unchecked Fahim break it down in the middle of a verse to say, I'm in the middle of the monkey, rocking Jesus pieces, and my ice is really chunky. Back in high school I was a flunky, fuck up out my face before I shoot you out the country. It's just so fun. Lost Kings. In the long list of albums on this list, it's easy for some of them to feel interchangeable, but not this one. Lost Kings has always felt bigger than the rest of his catalog, from the curation with more bombastic beats, to Fahim's songwriting, which is a clear step up above most. This album has got the sauce to it, and there's no fat on this album either. The 3 features come from Mach-Hammy twice, and 1 from Vinny Paz, who's a rare rap legend featured on a Fahim record. And I really think that his style fits perfectly for what Fahim does here. All the beats expertly toe the line between cool and exciting, living right in the sweet spot for Fahim to do some of his best work on top of. This was released in 2020, and I think it's the perfect middle point of Fahim's career. He channels the energy and passion of his early records, while still embracing the calm nobility that he's been rapping with through most of the 20s. Just like with many of these albums at the top of this list, I love every single track here. Stay Fly has one of my all-time favorite beats from Fahim. Some of these songs are a little soft and smoother, but then some of them, like the closing track Cash Rules, just completely knock. And I have to shout out what is probably a top 5 Fahim song for me, Renowned, which has some incredible verses and one of the most contagious hooks that Fahim has ever delivered. TGIF. Produced entirely by Fahim and executive produced by Mach-Hammy, this is one of the purest forms of Dump God mastery that you will ever hear. This is one of the longer albums in his catalog, and it's worth every minute. The God Fahim is one of the best rapper producers that we have, and this is his Exhibit A. 5 Times a Day is a perfect song, with Fahim using the catchiest of flows to relay important lyrics about why he prays 5 times a day. This album has a great mix of the two sides of Fahim that I keep talking about. The fun, free-flowing punchlines are right here beside his life advice and nobility. As a songwriter, this might even be where he peaked. He writes and delivers some awesome hooks on here, and like I said, there's not too many features, so it's really up to Fa to have us captivated for 48 minutes straight, and his beats and bars more than do the trick. He goes crazy on songs like Yellow that just have him barred the fuck out, and then at the end of the song, gets on this hilarious rant about the chemicals in food. This album is such a cool time capsule. It's the first time that he works with Noqh in a major way, and Fahim even shouts out Griselda. So there's this little bit of magic on here that was all around these guys at the time of making it. Listen, I've been talking about the God Fahim for over a couple hours now, and if you're still watching this, but you have not heard this record, then go dump yourself. This shit's a classic. Wide Berth. As I close out this 7 months journey of making this video, and my 6-year journey of fandom of the God Fahim, it's only fitting that the #1 album on this list is the first one that I ever heard. You can call it nostalgia all you want, but this is a perfect album and one of my favorite albums of all time. It's executive produced by Noqh. Half of these beats are produced by Fahim, and the other half are produced by staples of his catalog like Camouflage Monk, Danny, and JLVSN. And that's exactly what I want from an album from the God Fahim, the best of both worlds. The Shape of Slaughter starts it out with this incredible Juju Gotti hook that sets the tone for Fahim to weave one of the most poetic verses of his career. The beats on here are smooth as hell, and Fahim the MC is in his finest form. That young, unhinged Fahim that you hear a lot on his early records is not present on this one, and while I do usually love that style from him, every single syllable that he speaks on this record is perfectly placed. This has always felt like the album that he was meant to make, and even though the subject matter covers a lot of serious topics like personal growth and his struggles, so much of his personality shines through on this one. If you somehow made it to the end of this video without ever listening to the God Fahim before, I recommend you start out with this one just like I did, and who knows, maybe 6 years later, you'll be 2.5 hours into a video just like I am. This record rules, the God Fahim is awesome, and now I'm officially leaving dump season. Thank you for watching, everybody. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm finally done with this. This has been years in the making, really, and I've been actively writing and editing this video for just under 8 months, which is insane. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I bet there's not many people still sticking around to the end of this watching this, but if you are, thank you so much. I really made this video for you guys. I want to do something that really only I've ever done, something that you guys I think would appreciate. Let me know down in the comments, should I do something crazy like this for 30,000 subscribers, 40,000, 50,000? I'm not sure. If you want me to do another artist like this, drop it in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to let me know what your top 5 Fahim albums are as well in the comments. Before I sign off, I just want to say again how thankful I am for all of you guys for rocking with me for the past few years. 20,000 subscribers is insane. I really can't believe that I've gotten this far, and it's all because of you guys, so thank you once again from the bottom of my heart. And now that this juggernaut of a video is out of the way, I have a lot more headed to you guys. So stay tuned, stay safe, and stay def. Thanks for watching.